that to like Smash, just especially for tournament settings,
Hi
sounds like the
guys.
best possible thing.
What?
Oh shit!
Hello. Oh yeah, we're live.
We are
Let's
live.
Go.
Let's go.
Let's go. It's kind of
Let's
early.
not.
Well, it's not early.
So hey,
but
what do you guys want to do today, or just like?
I'm gonna talk about Nier.
Let's talk about Nier.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about Nier, bro. Let's go.
Sounds
Let's
near
go.
perfect.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome everybody to Baby Seal Team 7. I'm very excited to have my guests on. Oh, thank you for the host, Mercedes. And just in general, everybody should go support Mercedes. Great voiceover.
Great voice actress.
Absolutely. So, what are we doing here today? Well, SEAL Team 7 is generally a discussion forum for the spiciest lore discussions for Final Fantasy VII Remake and its future. Today we're going to have a little bit of a more hypothetical conversation about how can Remake move forward in a way that doesn't destroy Final Fantasy VII, basically. And I'm really excited for the guests that I have on today. I'm going to give them little introductions and then allow them to introduce themselves. First, we have Blitz, who is a tremendous YouTube channel and presence. He makes just about daily content. He's currently doing some play streams of Final Fantasy Tactics and Nier, and he makes pretty regular Final Fantasy VII content. He's had a couple of videos this week because I think we've had some little bits of news, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. Super great dude, super great community. One of the people I've been really fortunate to get to know through SEAL Team 7. This is in fact his second SEAL Team 7 visit, which makes him a veteran technically. So but I'm really excited to introduce our two newcomers. First, I want to introduce FishFriedCat, and FishFriedCat makes tremendous both comedic and poignant video content regarding, well, a variety of games, but Final Fantasy is definitely in his wheelhouse. He may or may not mention a game that he kind of likes. He doesn't really like it, called Trails of Cold Steel, that may come up today, and I'll let him bring that up. And then my good friend, the NightskyPrince, is here as well, and he too is a legendary content creator. He's got a channel that I think we've all referenced at times, and he's actually been a friend of mine through the entirety of the year. He once had me on his show, and he gave me a opportunity to defend Remake from, well, him, and we've established a good relationship, and honestly, he's been a good friend. He's been somebody I talk to probably every day ever since, and we just vent about our daily struggles as content creators and people that are in this fandom. And so he wanted to come on, I think because he's got some things to say about how Remake can move forward, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what he thinks out in the fandom. I think a lot of people are really convinced he believes one thing that isn't true, and that somehow he's not a fan of Final Fantasy VII, when that in fact is not the case.
I got a big ass Buster Sword.
Yeah,
right here.
he's a hardcore fan.
Oh shit! Hey,
That's right.
Twinsies.
Yeah, they
Let's
got
go.
Buster Sword twinsies. Yeah, so
yours looks more deadlier than mine. Holy shit!
Yeah, I had a really pro prop maker make it. He's really good, and then hanging on that is actually like my
yeah,
really
look
nice
at that.
cloud I got some other Final Fantasy stuff here. I'm still adding on to my poster collection here. I got some like signed FF12 posters up there.
Ooh.
Wrong way. Big ass Noctis over here.
God
Well,
damn.
yeah, you gotta have a big Noctis.
The best thing about the big ass Noctis, you can't really hold on. You can't really see it, but it still has the original release date for 15 on there. September 30th, and then it got delayed till November 29th.
And we just
all
learned
that stuff, and you're still a fake fan. I can't believe it.
It's a
Yeah,
collector's
you're
like collector's item that's no longer exists. It's worth a lot more because it's like a misprint. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's like the run of the FF7 case that has like the title.
Masterpiece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of all words to get messed up, it's masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's a subtle joke about the localization. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too subtle.
Like they should have kept it honestly, because it set expectations for like when you played the actual game, and like there was like all these typos.
Yeah, like I was talking to somebody last night during our tactics stream, and I was like, they're like, oh, my favorite character in Final Fantasy is Aerith. Aerith is the best. I don't like Aerith. And I was like, you actually know that Aerith is a typo, believe it or not. And it's not supposed to be Aerith. It's actually supposed to be Areola. And
Oh, fuck,
this
dude.
got so
So that's going to be what this stream is like, by the way, because a lot of us, one, we've talked about this a lot, and so sometimes we might devolve into just like stuff that we've talked about, and so you'll get a little bit of exploration into hours of in jokes between all of us, and so you'll get to know what the experience of being in our inner circle is like, and see how uncomfortable that is. And then we'll also probably talk about Remake occasionally, but it's going to be a lot of Areola jokes, etc. So strap in, guys.
Are we talking about the Nier or Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Nier.
Because one of them I want to talk about more than the other. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and look, I'll be honest, we're probably going to talk a little bit about Nier because it's very current. We're excited, and so some Nier might come up. And at the edge of this conversation, we're going to be trying to get everybody that's listening here to raid Final Fan TV at the end of this stream, because he's got a really exciting debut. He interviewed somebody that actually NightskyPrince got interviewed to recently, and he'd like all of us to support that stream. So we'll probably be doing that next. First of all, how is Philip Hartshorn's here? Philip Hartshorn is here. He's going to be a guest on my show in a couple of weeks, by the way. And if you guys are not familiar with the Phil Up, and you guys are not philosophers who watch Filmmaker Reacts, please just pause listening to me and go subscribe to his YouTube along with like 150,000 other people, and watch his like insane martial arts. Like that guy is an incredible martial artist, and he also has badass Final Fantasy VII Remake takes. In fact, when I first started like getting into the community, watching his reactions to Final Fantasy was one of my favorite things to do. Like, it was really sweet. So I'm excited to have him in the chat. Okay.
Say no more. I'll go watch his stuff right now.
No. God damn it. He's already done it. Oh no. Oh god.
FishFriedCat, everybody.
There he goes.
Man,
Okay.
Guys, this is very serious, okay?
Yeah.
This is where we're talking about a video game, okay? Blitz, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
I make videos and sleep a lot, and sometimes I stay a little bit up too late than I should, like, playing old school, amazing games. But other than that, we make Final Fantasy VII. Well, majority of the content of the channel originally was fighting game stuff, and I've always been a big Final Fantasy VII fan growing up. And when I first played Remake, well, actually, when I first got the Tifa, I was like, holy shit, I can make. There's nobody making like videos about these characters and how they play and how to play as them. Because the game, I'll be honest, the game itself doesn't really explain itself well. Like the tutorial itself, like leaves a lot of things out that I think, or some things will go over your head, especially. So I wanted to take that upon myself to like really bring that to the player, especially first time players and first timers to the Final Fantasy series, and give them an experience that they can really take to another level in this game. And I've gotten that response from a lot of people as well. A lot of people tell me that the videos enhanced their experience with the game because they were just getting their ass kicked the whole for beginning, and they didn't really know what each move did or what it was supposed to do or what the goal was essentially. And then I put that stuff to video form, and it's done pretty well, and I'm really thankful for all of that. And the support from the community has been overwhelmingly positive, and it's been amazing. And I'm just thankful to be able to continue to do that in a news form now, because obviously there's only so much videos about builds and stuff I can make with this game until the next one comes out. So thank you for everybody continuing to support that, and thank you for you guys having me on here, man. I feel blessed to be in this room. Well, we're not in the same room, but we're in the same Discord room of these amazing individuals, man. We got freaking NightskyPrince right here, yo. This guy, look at this dude. I love that face. I'm coming for that hair, by the way. I'm coming for that.
Thank you, thank you.
And I recently got put on to FishFriedCat. This dude's skits are fucking hilarious. Well, I don't want to spoil the first one that I saw, but man, it's a good one. So I'll let them tell you about that, man. But thank you so much for bringing me on here, guys. I really appreciate it a lot.
Well, you always have a standing reservation here, and depending on how these two do, they might as well. FishFriedCat, why don't you make us all laugh? Okay. Tell us about yourself.
Well, see, it seems I have one chance to, ever be on this show, because I'm pretty sure you're not going to invite me back after this.
No, I will.
Okay, thank you, buddy. I'll make sure you regret that. But thanks to my good buddy, famous YouTuber, NightskyPrince, he actually got me onto doing YouTube stuff. So at first I started with, just I tried to be a little funny with like Resident of Fate. Really hate that game, but I'm not going to tell you that in video form because I try to keep it positive. From there, like, I've kind of had like a slow buildup of like, I guess I was kind of doing review type stuff, and then I got really burnt out. Met up with NightskyPrince in person one time, and then I told him the story about why I can't call Aerith. Well, Aerith, I can't like call her by that name because I have a different association with it. And from there, he was like, "Dude, you should make that into a video." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure people don't want to hear about that type of content." But I ended up doing it for whatever reason. Like, it kind of took off, at least for a channel my size. And just like to give you a little background what it's about, when I was a kid, Eris was the name in the PS1 Final Fantasy. And the first time I ever heard about the name Aerith was through very legal programs like Orange Wire, that I found some fan art and it was labeled Aerith. And let's just say it was not the wholesome flower girl I thought she was. You'll probably have to go watch the video to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I made that video, and people who like that are very sick because, man, I talk about some weird stuff in there. But from there, that's where I decided to go, you know what? The whole reason why Prince wanted me to make videos is because I make funny Facebook posts. And then why not just put that personality into video form? And then that's when I really started embracing the the Yoko Taro mask, I'll call it, that you see right next to my camera. And just from there, I try to be funny. If you're lucky, I might put out a video soon, but my uploads they're not bad right now. They're a little bad. They're a little bad. But I'm trying. I've been playing Fantasian, which very good game. Everyone should play it, especially if you have an Apple device. Go play it, and I'll see what I can do with that. But that's about all I can think of right now.
Well, thank you, and yeah, we'll put links in the chat for your YouTube channel, and if this gets a little too spicy for your tastes, just go do a palate cleanse with FishFriedCat's weird Hente Aerith video, and then come back. We're good. NightskyPrince, tell us what you do.
Oh boy, I'm the guy who gets roasted on the Final Fantasy VII Remake Reddit. You may know me from there. No, I'm a YouTuber. I've been doing this for I believe it was 4 years as of last month or the month before. It was March. That was my 4-year anniversary.
Damn,
congrats, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh yeah. Been doing this for a while now, and it's pretty much my full time. All I do is make these Final Fantasy videos, push them out. At one point, I was making so many remake. I think I made somewhere near like 200, 300 remake videos total, talking about the game almost daily leading up to release. And of course, I had my differences with the storytelling. I ended up being in the minority, although my reason for joining today is not just to discuss necessarily my personal takes on where they want or where they should go. It's more or less about what I think that they need to do to avoid necessarily being divisive going forward, because I think there's going to be some things and some situations set where everyone has different expectations going forward, and how they can avoid making those expectations clash in such a way that some people end up being disappointed and some people end up being satisfied, and how can they continue to keep people on board. And that's one of the main focuses I'm here for today. In terms of what I've been doing lately, now that I've moved away from that, I've just been focusing on other Final Fantasies. Final Fantasy 14 has just been amazing for me. It's actually probably my favorite Final Fantasy of all time now, particularly after Shadowbringers,
Do the trial plug.
Yeah. I mean, you guys may or may not have heard of this critically acclaimed MMORPG called Final Fantasy 14. Yeah, they're letting you play now free up to Heavens, where it's pretty awesome, right?
And you can go all the way up to level 60.
All the way up to level 60, bro.
World of Warcraft, you can only go up to level 20.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we don't do Blizzard around here, nah.
not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. So my focus now again is on Final Fantasy 14 and on Final Fantasy 16, and then I'm also doing like a lot of other JRPGs. There's a big focus on Nier on my channel, big focus on Lost Soul Aside, and doing all these other things.
Cold Steel.
Cold Steel is on the list. Just doing everything I can to really just focus on the positive sense. I didn't want to just continue to just do focus on like Remake, for example, and continuously harp on the same criticisms, especially during information droughts where we can only really talk about the same shit in circles for so many times, right? And then after a while, then things become like, okay, well then, if you don't have anything nice to say, you move on. And so today I did not come on here to bash the game. And if you're looking for me to bash the game, if you're one of those people, that is not what I am here to do. I am here to discuss unity and positivity.
And Nier.
I'm here to discuss in Nier. I am here to discuss actually more along the lines of what they need to do to keep everybody on board, because I think that they are this close to making it a divisive game, because right now it's not. But I think that it is right on the border of becoming one after part one, and that's what I'm here for. So yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, launching into that topic so we can get through this as soon as possible so that we can talk about Nier. So, okay. You started it with, this is on the border of being a divisive game. And and I think for context of how divisive it is, just the threat of the ending. The ending actually told us very little. And the ending on its own, like you said, wasn't really enough to panic about. I mean, essentially, and we've talked about this nonstop, but thank you, Phil. We've talked about this nonstop, but if you look at what's good about Remake, like it took care to handle a bunch of scenes that were really hard to remake, like particularly the Honeybee Inn, like masterfully. And so if you just like take Remake on its own, part one, and there are like very valid criticisms that you could make, things like the door texture, just the textures in general, kind of how small the game was, how we couldn't explore much of Midgar, stuff like that, functional stuff. You take all that aside and you just look at the story. Nothing super bad to the story has happened yet. But at the final 1% of the game, there was this massive threat. And that threat was Zack surviving. Like, that was it. Like, that is a huge, that just that little threat was enough to already divide a future tripping fan base into like, what does this mean? And fuck that. Basically those are the two two different ways. And so I'm going to go around the room here, around the proverbial room. What if the walls just came down and we let them all know that we're just in the same house in different rooms? That'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So how can they move forward? Okay, just, we don't need to focus on it, but just we'll give a little bit of context for things they could do that that really would be bad, that could just, we won't say, hey, oh, this sucks, like don't do that. We'll just give it a little bit of space for context, and then what you guys each think, what direction should we move in, or what direction could they move in that would be creatively good, that doesn't, I mean, whether that's divisive or not. So let's start with Blitz.
Hey, what's up? So I think, like, for me, it's always been really weird with Final Fantasy VII. I love these characters. Like, so when I was younger, I would watch any form of media or play any sort of game. I was very impressionable, and whatever I played left a big impact on me, as I'm sure it did for a lot of people. So these characters like Cloud, Tifa, Sephiroth, Vincent, or whatever, anytime I would see them anywhere else, I always felt proud. I was like, yo, I know that, they're amazing. Like, they're so cool, and nobody else knows about them. And I'm like, oh, you're such a loser. Like, this character, you know. And for me, it feels like when Remake had all that stuff going on at the end, with obviously the story's going to be very different or slightly different going forward. It's it didn't really bother me as much, because I felt like with these characters, I love them so much, and I know a lot of people do, that I'll follow them down whatever shithole they go down, whatever direction they decide to go with this story. I'm in. I'm invested. I love these characters, and that's always been a big, factor for me, essentially. Now, the whole thing with Zack is interesting, because I played Crisis Core like in high school, and I knew who Zack was in the original game, but a Crisis Core gives you a little bit more of a, I guess, inside, like, interpersonal story, playing as him and doing these things as him and seeing how he reacts to all this stuff, right? So I got to learn this character, learn about this character a little bit more, and fucking cried at the end of that game. This handheld, I'm sitting in my bed playing this handheld game, and I'm just like, my dad walks in and he's like, "Yo, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "Leave me alone, just close the door." But like, you learn more about this character, and you're like, you learn a lot of these values of like what this character's life taught you. He's happy-go-lucky. He s- is very likable, and unfortunately, he dies. And we all know Cloud takes on, the mantle, I guess you could say. Uh, a lot of people are worried that with Zack coming back to life, it takes away the values of which Zack's, I guess, death taught them, but also it changes the story up a little bit. But for me, I'm not necessarily bothered by it because I personally think that it's a different universe, and I think they go through extreme lengths to show us that with the controversial stamp bag, the terrier versus the beagle we've been shown throughout the entirety of Remake. They made it a point in Remake to show this beagle to us in many different segments, and then after that, it's consistently in the background as not like necessarily a plot device, but it's in the background. You see it. You're like, okay, the beagle, stamp, Shinra. And then at the end of the game, when they show Zack surviving, once the whispers are, dead, and he's able to like, create his own fate, they slow it down for us. They show us that, hey, this universe has a different stamp. It's a terrier. And then you hear like a subtle like bass drop. Like if you go back and you listen to it with headphones, it goes "Doo-doo-doo." It's like whoa. And they slow it down and they want you to focus on this. And like, me and NightskyPrince were talking about it the other day. Uh the developers even said, like, we want you to pay attention to that. It's very important. Like that is a very important aspect about what you're seeing right here. So for me, I think that whole scenario isn't going to affect directly, I guess, at least immediately, the remake timeline that we're playing right now with Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa and main party. I think that this is going to potentially give Zack his own, I don't know, DLC, his own game, a spin-off maybe, like a what if scenario in an alternate universe that won't necessarily affect the way things are going with remake. And I think it'll give the Zack fans and the Zareth shippers a chance to see their ends finally meet and tied up extremely well. And that's just what I think personally.
Okay, fair. So, for context too, if you guys want to know, so the developer interviews we're talking about are, so there actually is still this debate. Like, did stamp mean anything? Was it just a misdirection? You know what the whole deal is. So for anybody that's watched me do my playthroughs, I do extremely like upsettingly thorough playthroughs where like I've gone around and I've counted all the textures, counted stamps, counted graffiti, and there are 99 stamps that appear in Remake, all of them Beagle, with the exception of the 100th stamp, which is that terrier. Nojima, in an interview in the Ultimania, does say like, "Hey, did you notice stamp?" And this is in direct response to the interviewer asking, "Zack seemingly survived. What's that about?" And Nomura was like, "Well, that's part of the mystery we set up." And then Nojima just like interjects, like, "Did you see stamp?" Wink, wink. Like he was so proud of this little trick he pulled in the most ham-fisted way possible. So there's that. There are additional confirmations, and the language is vague enough that they could, they're not exactly saying it, but they're saying it. But in the Materials Ultimania and in the July Famitsu interview regarding Remake, where the developers essentially come out and say, yeah, we're really excited for fans' responses to Zack's new fate. So it's Zack's in this somehow. We can kind of, we don't know what that means. It could mean that we have like, a 4-hour scene of him like dying right before he gets to Midgar or something. That seems unlikely, but just for context on what we said, and if you guys want those links, be sure and hit me up afterwards. And then let's move over to FishFriedCat. What should we do to make sure
About the Zach
Remake stays
problem?
great? Well, yeah, about the Zach problem.
So I'm obviously gonna keep playing Remake because, like Blitz said, the characters I found were the best part about Remake. I think they did Cloud, Barrett, Aerith, all of them so well. Um, the only way I could see Zach working is if I don't know if you ever watched Dexter, um, the Showtime series, but
Which is
Yeah.
coming back soon.
Dexter, what's that?
It's
We're
coming
just
back,
getting
yeah.
it's coming back.
Oh yeah. So you remember how Dexter's adoptive father, he died like before the series even started, but he kept showing up and like as Dexter's conscious, pretty much guiding him.
Raiden,
That's
basically.
Yeah, like that's the best possible way, and a way like I would legitimately enjoy seeing them handling Zach. Like, and I thought about that a lot, and that was like and I didn't come up with that until talking with Prince a few days ago. But that was, if that happens, I will actually be on board with Zach coming back because he would still be dead, but he would still have like enough screen time guiding Cloud through whatever situations, and then maybe just at first show that it's Cloud talking to himself, but over time reveal that it's Zach that's kind of been doing it, and that way there's like that kind of little subtle tie-in about the memory thing from the original game. Um, but that's basically all I could think of when I was trying to think what direction they can go with this that would make me and probably other people happy to where, because like if Zach's alive and people go, well, it's another timeline, and it feels like at some point these timelines are going to have to converge, and then maybe that's when something interesting will happen. We don't know yet, but that's all I got on it.
Ryan?
Oh boy. Well, like Blitz and FishFriedCat, I love these characters. But the reason I love these characters is heavily dependent on the journey that they went through to shape who they are. And even as Aerith says before the final battle, is that by changing these events, we change who we are as people. So they aren't the same characters when you do change just the really important key events, right? And she even acknowledges that herself, and that's a meta commentary from the developers, even acknowledging that when you take out the circumstances that make the person who they are, then you do change that person. So I do think that while we do love these characters, there is an important acknowledgement of the sort of development and struggles that they went through in order for them to be who they are. And if we take that away from them, then they aren't the same characters anymore. They're different characters. They come into different things, and maybe we could like those things more, but and maybe we won't. It's just it's the risk that they run, and that's just kind of that's the game that they've decided to play. They may win, they may lose. And as someone had mentioned earlier, we don't lose the original game, but we do lose the opportunity for a proper quote unquote Final Fantasy VII remake. And to me, that's still a huge loss because we've all wanted a Final Fantasy VII remake for like decades, right? The whole reason this game even exists, in fact, is because we wouldn't shut the fuck up about wanting a Final Fantasy VII remake. We begged them, and we pleaded with them for a Final Fantasy VII remake. So I think a lot of people try to interject. Well, even if this sucks, we still have the original. The fact that we wanted this thing for so long and pleaded for this thing for so long means that this thing also has some value to us too. This idea of remaking Final Fantasy VII current day technology. So even though we will never lose the original game and it will always be a masterpiece no matter where the remake goes, there is still a huge loss if the remake doesn't deliver in the way that we're all hoping. In terms of multiverse, is that I feel multiverse devalues character loss. So with multiverse, if a character dies and a character you see that character within another universe, the player themselves never has to experience loss. The player themselves never has to go through that. part of what made Aerith's death so effective is that it wasn't just Cloud losing Aerith and the party losing Aerith. You, as the player, also lost Aerith. That you, as the player, never got to use Aerith in combat again. She was the only character that was a white mage, even though we really don't have classes in the traditional sense in FF7. And in fact, that loss will be more apparent if she does in fact die in Remake, because she is the only character who plays in the way that she does. Yeah, it's so if the player does not experience that loss, then it doesn't mean anything. If Cloud is going through grief of losing a character, and then you, the player, see that character in the next scene, you, the player, never have to actually go through that actual loss or actually contemplate it on any higher level. So the player themselves has to experience that loss in order for it to resonate. And if the player themselves doesn't do it, then the characters are simply dying for shock value at that point. And I don't think death for shock value adds anything of value. And I don't think most of the deaths in Final Fantasy VII Original were for shock value. Each and every one of them had a powerful meaning behind it that you could analyze and discuss for decades, like we have been doing as Final Fantasy VII fans, right? And so when it comes to Zack, Zack's death, I was not a huge fan of the character, obviously, but a lot of people were. Most people are, I would say, were a huge fan. And they found very profound meaning in the way that Zack died when he died. And bringing him back to life, for some people, that's going to be great. Some people, that's all they want is for their favorite characters to be happy. And they're not wrong to feel that way. No one's wrong to feel however they want a story's direction to go. That includes people who wanted to stick to the original aren't wrong, people who wanted to diverge aren't wrong, people who want an ultra happy ending aren't wrong. But now we have all these different threads because we are diverging so much. And all these different people in these different camps. And right now things are ambiguous enough to whether if Zack does live, there is a whole group of people who are like, fuck this, I'm done. And there's a whole other group of people who are like, Zack living is going to make me so happy. It is going to make me, it is going to make this remake so good. Suck it, purist. And that's their position. And then you have these two people that both really enjoyed game one, but their takes are diametrically opposed from each other. Someone is like vacuuming outside right now. I hope you guys don't hear this. But those two takes are diametrically opposed. Both people are excited. And so no matter which way they go, there is going to be some divisiveness. Now, how do I think they personally should handle it? A lot like what FishFriedCat was saying, one of my favorite characters, it's a very similar type of way of handling it, and that is Artbert from Shadowbringers. Now, for those of you who haven't played Shadowbringers, I'm not going to spoil all of Shadowbringers, but one of the previous Warriors of Light is like a ghost, and he follows you, and he sort of gives you exposition on the places and things that he did and like where he went wrong. So he's giving you all these different things and building up. And there's a way that it climaxes, again, that I won't spoil it, that is really, really, really beautiful. And I think that would be the best way to include Zack going forward, is to keep him dead, but to have Zack be like this ghost omnipresence that talks to Cloud. So like when, for example, maybe like when Cloud was in his apartment in game one, he'd be talking to this ghost and you couldn't see his face. And he would just be having this interaction with Zack about like whatever circumstances he was going through. And Zack would just be sort of there to guide him and give him that sort of like emotional support. And then at the end, you can converge that and reveal that it's Zack, and that Zack has been there with Cloud in some form the whole time. And that way, Zack fans have Zack the whole time, the whole game. They have Zack. He's present. He's within Cloud's mind and spirit, and Cloud's just kind of having this inner monologue with Zack. And so Zack fans get so much more Zack that way, and get all these like Zack moments without Zack actually having to be alive and there. And then also, you also get the same theme of Final Fantasy VII, where Cloud is still dealing with grief by talking with that Zack inside of his head. But Zack doesn't actually have to be alive and present and actually doing stuff, and we don't have to have the moments where, and I don't mean to offend anyone who thinks otherwise, but I would find it quite cringe, honestly, for a character to just come back to life after they died 2 months ago. But we could still have the fan service present for him to be there without maybe undoing or unwriting what Cloud's character development was. That's how I personally would approach it.
You know, and that's actually a very, it's actually a very good point. I like all of that what you said too, and you know, it actually kind of reminds me because like when I was after understanding who Zack was as the character in the story, I started to put it together. Oh wait, there are moments where Cloud does talk to himself a lot in the original game. You get the black screen with the white wall of text. You get like his head trauma when he starts like shaking his head and stuff. I always figured like those moments and stuff were exactly what you and FishFriedCat were talking about. It's Zack talking to Cloud in a way where we can't see him, but we hear him. And I thought they were gonna show that in Remake, in the scene where he falls from the reactor and then he wakes up with Aerith. Remember, there's a scene where he's like in a white room and he's like sleeping kind of, and his eyes are closed, and somebody walks up to him and you see their feet and it's a soldier outfit and you're like, oh shit, is this gonna be? And it's not Zack, it's just
I thought that too. I thought that too. And it almost makes you wonder why they didn't do it in game one, right?
yeah, maybe who knows. I
Yeah.
mean, I like that idea a lot. I think that's a really
Mhm.
good idea from both of you guys.
No, I do want to correct Prince on one thing.
What's
When
up?
I said I like the characters, I wasn't talking about their personality or anything like that. I just meant that they were hot. So don't come at me with the. I felt very attacked when you brought up that Aerith quote, and you were like, "Oh, they won't be the same characters. They'll still be just as hot, buddy. Let me. I promise you."
Okay.
And once they're at Costa del Sol and we have the bikini scenes, they'll be even hotter.
Oh yeah, Hojo's gonna be
Yeah.
just packing heat.
Thank you, thank you,
Costa
baby.
del
So
Sol.
I'm waiting for that Hojo.
We're gonna get
Oh, man,
Speedo
we'll
Dio,
get to see.
Speedo Dio, and Speedo Hojo.
Oh man, they could. Yeah, that. So personally, how they ruin Remake is they tone down Dio. Like they tone down Dio, I'm out. Okay, so I have some thoughts on this, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I have 20 hours of thoughts on this if you look through my channel. On the topic of Zack, we'll kind of stay there. You know, one of the ideas that Mo brings up constantly is the that what he thinks they're going to do with Zack. And Mo Gallagher, by the way, MJ Gallagher, author of many Final Fantasy VII related works, but most notably Norse myths and Final Fantasy. Great guy. He's heavily involved with KupoCon too. Just all around amazing dude. He thinks that how they might implement Zack in the Terrier timeline is similar to how they implemented Laguna in Final Fantasy VIII, where you will switch between these two, these two variants of the story. And while it's a little different because they're part of the same timeline in Final Fantasy VIII, just from a raw implementation perspective, the idea of switching between this what if scenario and the actual events of the Beagle timeline, are a potential way to move forward. And I don't dislike that idea. I think that'd be really neat. The problem with having to tell two stories is that you've got to tell two stories, and that takes real estate away from the game. And so how much time do they have to do this? How much money and effort? And would a second story just be better off told in a different spin-off game? And I mean, considering we've got a battle royale game about the origins of Deep Ground coming out, I mean, how obscure is that? Like, it's not impossible that we may get like some full series Zack game. I'm not saying that, My mind is telling me that that's probably not the direction that they're going with this, but that's kind of beside the point. One of the things that I wanted to get to was the concept of death and grief. And one thing that I think both Nier and a couple of other examples, notably WandaVision of all things, and Netflix's Dark, have shown the incredible potential of grieving versions of a character, not just like understanding what identity is, like that to massively spoil WandaVision, there is a grief scene with a character that ends up not being the main continuity's version of the character, and in the audience, aka the player, ends up grieving that character much more than the original continuity's version, and it's because they become independent. The character that gets created through this bizarre, dumb process still is individual, and grief is still really powerful. And I think there's some really good cases to be made for multiverse not devaluing death. That being said, you know, it's a hard thing to pull off, and can they pull it off? There are certainly cases where you feel like Kingdom Hearts, like death is meaningless, like because there's so many versions of all these characters, and then there's nobodies and stuff like that. So convoluted that you really do disconnect. But that's not to say it can't be done. And Nier also, because there's different continuities in Niers, and it's hard to, like, you can get into all this bizarre semantic stuff with what's a multiverse in comparison between like Marvel continuity and like Nier. They feel differently, they express differently, and which one are we getting in Remake? And that's also up for debate. But somebody, in my opinion, a team that has been able to make these characters as rich, full of emotion, full of motive, like the characters were so well done in Remake that I have some degree of confidence that whatever the characters change into will also be interesting if that's what happens. But how should they address Zack? When it first happened, I loved Remake. I loved every minute of it, and I was like, when I first saw Zack survived, I was like, okay, I'm really excited for what this means, but I cannot personally imagine a way for them to move forward this in a satisfying way. Like, the amount of satisfying ways to integrate Zack into the story got very narrow immediately. And I've spent the last year talking to people, and to be totally honest, the most satisfying one is that he finds a worse way to die right before Midgard. That's still my favorite one. That being said, what I hope for Zack's fate is that whatever they were planning on doing when they wrote that scene into the game, they still do it. Regardless of what the fans have responded with, I do not want them to pull away from whatever their plan is, because I do believe they've had whatever this plan is in place since Crisis Core. And so they've had a lot of time to think about it, and not just Nomura, but like Nojima. And he's the one that I'm really hoping for the most, has the most inclusion in this, because he put his all of his love into the characters of Remake, shows how much he's thought about each character, every little thing, like, scripted in fist clutches, and just there's all this emotionality and tonal choices that are made with his dialogue that really express a character. And we've been talking about Nier and Fantasian, and I've played through all of Nier, all of Final Fantasy VII Remake, all of Kingdom Hearts 3 and all of Fantasian in the last month, because I wanted to compare what the experience is like. And the thing that Remake,
hell.
I know, and the way that Remake, almost specifically for this conversation, by the way, that was why I did it. And the thing that Remake did better than any of them, by a mile, was character development. And sure, the characters are 30-year-old characters and there's a bunch of source material, but you could tell that it was the focus of the game. So much so that the characters all look beautiful and the environments look like trash. Like, that's the focus of Final Fantasy VII Remake, is those characters. And so whatever journey they go through, if that team that developed those characters is developing whatever they turn into, I have some degree of confidence that it'll at least satisfy that for me. So that's my take. I'm not gonna have the last word on all of these topics, because that's not fair. So let's.
Well, I can chime in here because I wanted to say something which I already kind of forgot where I was going with it, but damn, actually, never mind.
Damn, what a typical conversation with.
Yeah, no, yeah. I have really, really bad ADHD. So actually, no, I do think I vaguely remember what I was going to say, because we were talking about the characters here, and I do think that characters are a focus, but I feel like characters can almost be such a focus to the actual detriment of the story itself, because if you're too into characters and you're too into the character moments, sometimes you have to also give moments for those characters where you take them away, like you did with Aerith, like you do with Zack, or many of the other character deaths in the scene. And so there does seem to almost be this point of what they're teasing of maybe it going in a happy direction, like an ultra happy ending. If there's anything that we do know about Square Enix sequels, as if this is indeed a sequel and not just a remake with some additional meat on it, and if it is a continuation from where we left off with Advent Children. One thing that we know about Square Enix sequels consistently, or Final Fantasy sequels, is that they tend to undo death. They tend to give characters happy endings so that we can feel some kind of finality. So, and I feel like that is the direction that they're going in, and that will make some people happy, and that will make other people livid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the slippery slope that they are playing with right now.
And actually, that's my next topic. And I couldn't agree more. Like that, there's a lot we'll say on that. So I'd say the next topic that I'd like to bring up is, should Aerith still die? Will Aerith still die? And is there a wrong way to handle that? Is there a right way to handle that? And we'll start with FishFriedCat this time.
No, don't.
Do it, man.
Look,
you got it.
Man,
you got this.
I know I'm still early in like my content creation year, and I do not want to like have me or my family like harassed on Twitter. But I swear you made the most compelling argument, especially for the case of Remake being a sequel. Like I can't find Aerith's death being satisfactory anymore, and it would have to be Tifa. Like there's no other way, because if you think about it, like what point is there to killing Aerith at this point if everything's a sequel? And as you mentioned, like in the original remake, in the original game, and even in Remake, like Tifa has been the cause for Cloud to like survive and get through things, and then ultimately defeat Sephiroth.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine, like if things don't follow through, which they probably won't, or they probably will, I don't know how Remake's gonna go, because I don't know why Sephiroth keeps trying to get Cloud to join him, but I'm guessing at some point, and I kind of lost the train of thought, but at some point, it would just make sense to kill Tifa, because like I don't see Aerith stuff being impactful anymore. And if they want to change things up and then surprise people and still have, you know, death in any way, oh my God, I'm done. Like I can't. I'm not gonna make it anymore. Like as a content creator, I just said kill Tifa a bunch of times, and I can't even I'm too nervous to properly make that argument, but I said it anyway. But like, she pulled him out of the live stream. She saved him from falling on after that fight with Rufus in Remake. Like, she is basically his rock, if that's the right word.
Yeah, she's the anchor. So an informed Sephiroth that can obviously see the future. If he really wanted to detangle Cloud's plans, that's certainly the way to do it, right?
Yeah, and it's just it's hard to see it any other way. And I do love Tifa, especially after Remake. Like the moment she strong armed that one dude for filter payments with Cloud, I knew I was in love. And I also really love it. It would be tragic to see anyone die. Like even for a moment, I believed when Sephiroth killed Barrett, like after that Shinra conversation, I was like, oh shit, they prepared to go this far. And but it's, I don't know, like
just like that was a plot device to show you what the Whispers are capable of and why Sephiroth needs to get rid of them, because no matter what action, even as powerful as Sephiroth is, makes the Whispers come and undo it.
Yeah, but the Whispers are kind of incompetent if you think about it, because it took thousands of them just to sprain Jesse's ankle. Then there was the
Actually, that's an interesting point. So, just a weird thing is you'll notice that it's much more difficult for the Whispers to injure anybody than save them, which is a little clue as to what they're probably made of. Like,
yeah, but it's also like it's hard for me to see the Whispers as like some kind of you know, meta commentary for them being the fans or trying to keep the original timeline in place, because like the fact that they even had to sprain Jesse's ankle just to get Cloud back on the Sector 5 bombing, that never happened. Fighting Reno never happened. The fact that they let Hojo just straight up tell Cloud he was never in Soldier, and then the Whisper goes, oh wait, I forgot to drag him away. And it's like, so it's when they have stuff like that, and I know you can't tell me with a team that has like everything written in such like loving detail and stuff that they had oversights for that, because I just want to know like what the Whispers were actually for, because I don't think it was to keep the original timeline in place in some way, or maybe like some small way, but I don't think that's their intention.
Me neither.
Well, what I think with them is that they were, I don't like the Whispers personally, really, but I think that what they were trying to do with them is essentially utilize them to keep major plot points happening. For example, if Cloud never goes on the mission, then none of that other stuff ever really transpires and goes off the way that it does, like Cloud meeting Aerith, in that way that when he falls from the sector, was it 5? Sector 5 or Sector 6, right?
5, yeah.
He falls down
Sector
and
6 has been collapsed for 30 years.
But the Whispers pretty much prevent major things from happening. Like Cloud and Reno can fight, right? And the Whispers won't adjust or change anything. But if Cloud tries to kill Reno, then they'll step in, which he did try to kill him, and then they stepped in, because if killing Reno prevents the bomb from going off, it prevents like the rest of the Sector 7 plate from falling. I think that they're there to prevent major things from changing.
Do you
think
if you read the assessment for the Whispers Viridae Cresceo and Rubrum, what they say specifically is that they're there to protect the timeline from changes, or they're from a future timeline to protect the timeline that gave birth to them. So the entirety of their purpose is just to make sure they exist. So they only get involved in things that will guarantee their existence. And so it's that at that point, it gets really important to understand what they are. And if you guys want an answer to that, strap in, because you've got 12 hours of SleepEasy videos to watch, which explains that in pretty great detail. Bottom line, they're negative live stream. They've actually been in Final Fantasy lore since the beginning. So shout out to SleepEasy for helping us all explain that. If you've got 12 hours, he's got another video. The reason he's not here, by the way, is he's aggressively editing what will be his best video to date by far. So just FYI.
Yep, 3 hours and 11 minutes. I've seen the promos.
But I hear what you're saying, FishFriedCat. I mean, like, yeah. So no, I get it. So FishFriedCat is officially saying that gotta kill Tifa. Sorry, guys.
I'll put my name behind that. I'll stick by it because
I'm behind it as well. I'm behind it as well.
That would be like an extremely emotional moment, especially just a lot of people love Tifa. Like I would say almost everybody does. And if you just, it's emotional. I'm a little backstory. I am a messed up person because I love Yoko Taro games. If you were to try to have some conversation about me with Nier Automata, some of the smarter people will go, "Oh yeah, well that just has such deep philosophical themes about what it actually means to be a human, or what's the difference between androids and robots."
Right.
No, what I want to know, how many dead bodies can we fit in this bad boy? I love it. Now I don't like mindless death, just to be super clear, but like I love when they'll have like super emotional moments where they kill off a character and then they just don't come back, or if they do come back, it's at a worse of a cost, which I won't say in any way because it'd be spoilers for
right
Nier Replicant. But like I just love when they do that. I love like when they can just not care about like because I think Final Fantasy 14 kind of suffers from it a little, where if a character becomes too popular, then they can't really do anything with them out of fear of backlash. So I kind of like whenever a creator can just not care about that and just do it. And killing Tifa, if they could do that, you know what, I would stand Remake. I'd get a Remake tattoo, whatever. I would scream Remake is the best game from the rooftops, because that is a bold decision, which I thought they were going to do when they killed Barrett, because that would have been a really bold decision. But they didn't quite go with that, and then they ended up bringing Zack back alive, allegedly. All this stuff, it's kind of driving me mad, honestly. I just want to know. I just want part 2 and 3 and 15 or whatever to come out, just so I can know where they're going with this.
I know,
because it's kind of killing me.
There's a lot of uncertainty with it for sure.
As you can tell, my brain, I'm like very scatterbrained right now, and it's just trying to like comprehend all this stuff.
It's a crazy topic, because I mean I'm on the board as well, because I think it was Soldier First Class that had posted a video when Remake had first came out about I think it was called Tifa's New Fate, the video he had posted, and he was talking about all this and like how Tifa, and it made a lot of sense to me, because in another aspect too, Sephiroth's not an idiot, right? Like Sephiroth he's the reason why he's coming back in time, or back to a different timeline, is because he lost, and he knows why he lost, and he lost because this flower girl, was able to, when she died, she was able to basically manipulate or ask for help from the planet to manipulate the live stream in order to assist Holy. Because if you guys remember, Holy failed. Holy didn't stop Meteor in the original game. Even the party members acknowledged it in the cutscene. They're like, "Oh, Holy's like, it's not looking too good." And then all of a sudden, this light music starts playing, and it goes do 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 do, and then like you see the live stream poke out of the ground, and it comes in and assists, and then you get a flash frame of all of the characters' faces. You get everybody, all playable, all the characters in the CGI scene, and then it zooms in on Aerith's face, which is the first shot we see in the game, signifying that she's there and she's manipulating the live stream, or asks for it to help. So I think Sephiroth knows that, and with her dying, it could really just, like, what is he gonna do? Like, if he kills Aerith, like, yeah, the live stream can just come out and I guess stop. Because I don't see any reason for Sephiroth to kill Aerith, basically. Whereas killing Tifa breaks the shit out of Cloud. I mean, Aerith does hurt Cloud, but she's like what? She's known Cloud for like 14 days.
Yeah.
At this point. And Tifa, he's known, we assume, all of his life. So losing Tifa would just send Cloud into this frenzy that Sephiroth wants. Sephiroth wants Cloud to have that hatred,
Mm-hmm.
that anger towards him, to feel angry, to be upset. Because I think obviously ultimately Sephiroth wants Cloud's body. Because for whatever reason, Cloud literally has plot armor and is very strong, and it's never been explained why. But I think ultimately that's Sephiroth's goal, and making Cloud lose control in that way, I think will ultimately give Sephiroth the big dub that he's looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, are we sure? Are we certain that Sephiroth's still going to try to cast Meteor and still try to destroy the planet again?
We're not sure of anything. We don't
Yeah.
know anything at this point. This
That's
could
the
all
problem.
be this.
Yeah.
All of this could be Cloud thirst on his part. It's just like he wants Cloud for himself. That's all this is about.
Yeah.
Yes, he wants Cloud's body. I understand.
Unless Cloud dies.
Okay, so
Guys, it's the only way to win.
so
Yeah.
a few things I do want to just say that you guys are great. By the way, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you all so much for being here. If you guys, let's just take a little spiritual break from this. Listeners at home, if you are
I
not
have my counterpoints too.
if you are not fully subscribed to every human being that's in this chat, take the time, just go to their YouTubes, hit subscribe, hit that little bell. I could pull up all the statistics saying that, showing the viewers to the subscribers, and it's depressing. But I know in my heart that all of you guys on this chat, you guys aren't part of that. You guys are subscribed viewers, and I really appreciate all of you for that. So thank you.
Is that a Blitz reference?
Might be a Blitz
Did
reference.
You know,
Did you know 75% of Blitz watchers are not subscribed?
Hey, Jimmy Kings, y'all appreciate that, bro.
That shit gets me every time, bro. Every time. I'm like,
I know they come out of nowhere, like, yeah, and so if you guys want to know why Rufus Shinra can see the whispers, maybe it's because you're not subscribed. And it's just out of nowhere, and it's like he always places it in the best spot. And I honestly watch every video just to see when he's gonna put that joke in. Like I'm really excited about it.
Oh man, thank you.
I'm gonna have to steal that.
Okay, I have a few little counter things too. So Sephiroth does have some good reasons to kill Aerith. I'm getting DMs like about it. So just for lore clarification, she is the last ancient. That's very important, and also one of the reasons I think she has to die is because there was something very significant to be her being the last of her species. There was something to that.
Yeah.
And then
can I make a quick thing real quick?
Yeah.
He can just kill her after. Like
just kill them both. Fuck yeah.
Just wait. If she happens to somehow teleport away and they're fighting in space, he can just like.
I mean, if this is just Sephiroth
after Meteor.
I mean, all of Sephiroth's competition has to go if he wants Cloud for sure.
Yeah, and sorry, but when having Meteor being casted and successfully destroying Gaia, also get rid of Aerith, and then killing Tifa, and which causes Cloud to go mad and then not do his job all that correctly, and then that way she's still dead, and then he wins on every front.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't even know what victory looks like for Sephiroth, and I think that's part of the thing too. We're trying to figure out what Sephiroth is up to, what he's really up to, and they've made that beautifully vague and cryptic. We're right at where NightskyPrince told us, which is this, everybody has a tendency to just put in their favorite theory, and they just assume that's the direction it's going. So nobody's unhappy yet because it hasn't gone in not their direction. So. NightskyPrince, I think he has some good responses here. What do you got for us?
Oh yeah, boy. First of all, as much sense as it might make to kill Tifa from a strategic standpoint, they never would. They wouldn't even commit to killing all of Avalanche.
It's
really. I cannot
In a
imagine
billion
them
years, yeah.
Yeah.
He's saving his Twitter account.
I do. Well, you're gone, buddy. You're gone. I'm alive. No, legitimately, that is what I think.
Yeah.
I think that if they would not commit to killing Avalanche, I could not see them committing to kill like super fan favorite characters. If they do kill her, it will be a fake out, which is also possible. I totally think they could do some kind of fake out death with her. But ultimately, they just care too much about fan feedback, even when they were talking about like Zach potentially having a happy ending. I think it was like the cutscene director who said that.
Mm-hmm.
When he talked about Zach having a happy ending, he mentioned fan feedback. He mentioned how fans all over the world have wanted to see a happy ending for Zach, and that sort of being the motivation, kind of teasing what direction they may go in, right? So if fan feedback matters that much to them, I cannot see them killing Tifa in any capacity. If they do, it would just be like it'd be a fake out thing to make you go, and then after that they bring her back in like 20 minutes. That's like the most I could ever see them doing. Even that cutscene where they kind of showed her like laying there dead for a couple seconds I was like, oh, interesting.
We're like,
And then
fake.
of course, I was like, but yeah, they weren't gonna do anything there. In terms of Aerith, I think Aerith will die because it's a very iconic scene to Final Fantasy VII. You can't even call it Final Fantasy VII Remake if you don't have that scene with Aerith dying. It's really crucial just to the overall aesthetic of Final Fantasy VII and what newcomers have thought of Final Fantasy VII. However, where I differ from a lot of people is I do not believe that she will stay dead, but I do think they will take her out for maybe like a game or so. I do think that you will think Aerith died, but I do not think she will stay dead. They will leave it off for a whole game, really, where Aerith died, and you're going to see all these conversations too, where people are like, "Ha ha, suck it, purist."
She dies and she becomes a summon.
Yeah. No, I don't even think she'll become.
That's what happened in the OG.
She'll become Minerva.
Okay, so
I mean that kind of happened in OG.
If
she was the healing rain that cleaned out the geostigma.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think that we are going to think that she is permanently dead. One thing that they have shown with Zach, at the very least, is that people coming back to life is now possible in some capacity, whether that's a different timeline, but basically that character fates are not fixed, especially now. So that's already possible and on the table for somehow some kind of alchemy to happen and her to come back. So that's already possible in the lore, and I think that's set up for her to die and then come back. So they're going to give you that moment again, and then they're also going to give you a happy ending. And speaking of mentioning fan feedback, when it comes to remake and influencing their decisions, and how the cutscene director mentioned how fans want to see a happy ending for Zach. A poll was ran when Final Fantasy VII Remake was first announced back in 2015. You can go find the article on Kotaku.
2014, but yeah.
No, it's 2015. I just looked at it yesterday.
Okay.
It was right after the announcement. That's why the poll was there.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the Japanese one where they asked what Japanese fans wanted?
Precisely.
Oh, yeah.
And the number one thing that Japanese fans wanted was a path where Aerith lived. So, considering that we've already seen them potentially reviving Zach because of how popular that idea was in Japan, then why would that same idea, not apply to Aerith, especially since the association with Zach and Aerith?
Mm-hmm.
It just seems very unlikely that Zach would be back and Aerith would be permanently dead, both from a writing perspective and from the perspective of them listening to fan feedback. And either one of those, I can't reconcile a way in which she dies. And I also can't reconcile a way in which they tease it and they get people excited about that and then they crush it, because it just doesn't seem like the development style of CBU1. And historically speaking, when we look back on CBU's one's games, Final Fantasy X and X-2, we look back on the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. This has not been how they've operated. And now with Nomura gone, we have Hamaguchi and we have Toriyama at the helm. Two Final Fantasy 13 people, in which we've already seen a lot of these types of story mechanics play out.
Right.
The revival from death, the whispers. I can't remember who it was. Oh yeah, it was our friend that said this. Me and Stefan's friend. I won't name him on here, so he won't get harassed. But he even mentioned that Sephiroth was kind of operating like a Foul C, the way he was controlling fate. So we've already seen some of that same, some of those same story mechanics, like elements, like transferring over into here from that team that has worked on it. So again, and it going in that same direction that was introduced in Final Fantasy 13 too. That makes a lot of sense. Even down to Caius's statement: if you change the future, you change the past. Well, guess what happened? The characters changed the future, and the past got changed because that came back to life. So we've already seen that whole thread with Caius play out, literally.
Sure. Yeah. And I agree. And so, what do you think is what's the path forward?
So the path forward, I think, is to, and again, I am a massive Aerith fanboy. I love Aerith. One of my favorite heroines in the Final Fantasy series, period.
Yeah.
She's got to die, and she has to permanently stay dead. And some people say that because it's the most impactful death in Final Fantasy VII, I mean,
probably Final Fantasy period.
Ubiquitous, and not only that, but it's also, I'm sorry, I fucked up. What I meant to say is that because it's a ubiquitous spoiler, sorry, sometimes the ADHD takes over and I go in different directions. Because it's a ubiquitous plot element that has just become a spoiler that everyone knows. A lot of people think that they can't go there again. I think that the best way to make that death hurt as much as it did is to put a greater emphasis on why her absence hurt so much in the first place and the grief that is going to be reflected in the characters. And that's why. And I think they've already set that up. I don't think there's a need to diverge from that. Yeah. Because what's the thing people were already saying while they were playing part one, right? Like, oh God, it's gonna hurt me so much when she dies. So they're already setting that up. People already are feeling that way. It's like, oh my God, she's so cute and I love her so much. I can't stand the idea of her dying in HD. And they already achieved it then, right?
And the developers have been, particularly Nomura, have been referencing Nier like a lot in their developer interviews as I'm not sure if you saw that, but
no, I didn't actually.
Yeah, the Whisper, the corrupted Whisper design was based on the Shades. That was in the Materials Ultimania.
Wow. Oh wow, no, I never saw that. That's amazing.
So I think yeah, it could go either way. Where they might be listening, they might have been listening in 2015, they might be listening now.
Yeah.
So because I think the fan response is now different. Like if they are listening, they might know that. I think now with the perspective of Remake coming out, a lot of us really Blitz. I get it, Blitz. You're a baller on a.
I did nothing. Don't look at the
Thank you so much for the gift subs, Blitz. I really appreciate it.
You deserve it, bro.
No, I hear what you're saying though. Like I fully agree. I think it'd be a big mistake for them to do anything but that. But I hear what you're saying too. Like 2015, as soon as like Japan started to get really excited, and they do have a tendency to listen to Japan before they listen to us. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And that's just natural too. You listen to the person next to you before you listen to thousands of miles away, right?
Their dub is done like almost a year in advance, right? Like the Japanese streamline the process.
Yeah, not as much for the mainline games anymore. Like they're starting to really narrow that field down. just so they could do simultaneous release and stuff. But historically, yeah, and for sure they're gonna, all the scripts are written in Japanese and by script writers that are around Japanese fans. So yeah.
And
definitely.
also, if the fans there feel that way because of cultural taste and bias, right? Then it's likely that they probably feel the same because they have those same biases within them, right?
Oh, thank you so much for the subs and looks hype train incoming. All right. Hey guys.
Hey.
Yeah, okay. So sorry, I was excited by the hype, so I didn't mean to interrupt. You do go on.
Oh yeah, one thing that they could do again is the Steins Gate route, which also kind of really excites me too. Is that but again it does kind of involve death fake outs, which some people feel ways about. But ultimately is that if they were to dang, people are popping off those gifts.
Thank you guys.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Jay Kim, way to
Ooh.
represent.
Hype
Holy
train.
shit,
Thank you
bro.
so much,
My
Jake
God.
Kim. Dude, you guys are great.
If they go to the Steins Gate route, for those of you who haven't watched Steins Gate, is that it's one of the best pieces of time travel fiction. If you haven't played the visual novel or watched the anime, they're both amazing. But basically, you save one person, right? But you may cause a shift. Basically, you may reach Steins Gate where fate changes, but then another person may become fated to die because you saved that one person, right? And so that's another way that they could also handle it that would be really interesting. I don't think that that would be as impactful as the original because it does convolute things to a great extent, and I don't think that you need to insert that in order to hammer home the the general feelings of grief that you incur from Final Fantasy VII. I think that as it was, it would already be it was already more impactful than that. However, that is still a not bad writing way to handle it, where you the player are able to sort of go back and then maybe you're able to save Aerith, but now Tifa or Sid or Barrett dies in her place, and then you have to sort of maybe undo those events and shift things back to the original timeline where Aerith died. And I do think that there is a power in that type of story because now you're creating this situation where sometimes things happen for a reason, and hindsight's a bitch. And that would actually be pretty resonant. Do I think that would be more resonant than how FF7 was told from the start? Not necessarily, but I still think that would be a pretty decent story and one that I could live with.
I like
Yeah,
it.
that's
I
why I
definitely,
like that a
I
lot.
definitely have to still watch. I have that on my list to watch, by the way.
Steins Gate,
You were talking
yeah.
about that earlier, yeah.
Definitely.
FishFriedCat actually got me on it, and now I was like, oh, this is one of my favorite animes now.
I cannot recommend enough Dark, the German Netflix show. Just that's another that can also, there's a lot of room for overlap in how you tell stories that involve different continuities. How to make the themes of loss, of humanity, of identity come through with these multiple breaks in continuity and topics like destiny and stuff like that. So that's another one to check out. But Steins Gate is just phenomenal. And Steins Gate Zero.
What if they just what if what if just showing Zack surviving in a alternate universe, another timeline, was just to show us that the whispers have affected everything, and they never show anything with Zack ever again. Like it's just something that keeps it's like a headcanon for characters or players to just see like, okay, this has affected so much and changed so much that it's affecting other timelines. But they actually never follow up with it. Like, say, for example, they never show it again in Remake. Like, Zack never comes to life or appears in Remake, or he never gets his own game, or he never gets his other form of media. That was just to show us that these beings are now gone and give, I guess, so to speak, those people that want Zack to have a happy ending a sort of roadmap towards it, but not actually follow up with it in any official Final Fantasy media? What if they just completely like all this doesn't actually happen? What do you guys think about that?
Seems like a pretty
It feels like they
expensive
spent.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think
So
Nojima would roll over in his grave after he
I'm,
so cleverly came up with Terrier Stamp. It just for
I
nothing.
would say that'd be an incredible flex with the budget, just to like lovingly recreate that Final Crisis Core scene and everything. And oh man, that would be actually funny, and I would enjoy that a lot.
I think the whole game was a budget flex.
from from a
Minus
meta
the doors
sense, I
and
think it would be
textures.
funny. There's no fucking way that they don't have
Yeah.
plans for it,
Be-
but yeah.
Because they repurposed remake assets to make that battle royale. Like, I think they want to get their money's worth.
oh,
Toshiro Cairo, thank you. Oh, and Downstorm. God,
You guys are legends.
you guys are legends.
If you guys keep going, we could just buy Final Fantasy VII like from Square Enix, and we can literally make all of this happen.
Bro, I'm down. Let's make a fighting game.
my
The-
God.
Final Fantasy fighting
Yes, finally, we can get Arc System
That isn't Dissidia, yeah.
Yeah. To the point of what Blitz was saying, again, for me, it's one, the player has to experience the loss in order for the death to actually be impactful. If the player does not experience the grief themselves, then it's not really a commentary on grief. And so that has to happen. And
I
then
would
the second
argue though, just on Zack,
yeah.
I didn't give a shit about Zack dying in the OG. I only give a shit about Zack dying because of Crisis Core. And even then, like whatever.
I was like, fuck this guy, Sonic the Hedgehog looking at.
I mean,
Yeah.
you only actually see him get shot in the international version, like in the OG.
He
it's just like
in the OG. Yeah.
he's like barely there. You're like, who's this palette swap? And so I don't think that the
Wait,
grief. Who's this palette
You didn't know
swap?
that?
You don't see him get killed in the OG version?
No,
Not in the original Japanese cut. No,
in the
It was
original-
added-
Oh no, in the Japanese cut. Oh, you by international you meant like okay.
No,
I
even
thought
in the-
international was entirely different.
No.
version.
Even in the very first North American cut, there's a scene that actually shows him getting like shot, and that's only in the international version, which is like, which was put into the later PC versions, So, but in the very, 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 very first North American version, like it's implied that he's going to get killed, but you don't see like his polygons bounce after being hit by bullets.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I remember that, and I actually thought so Crisis Core made me kind of dislike Zack for forgive me for kind of like how generic he felt. Like he didn't feel like he fit in well with the 7, like with the tone of 7.
That's why they killed him.
And I thought like the original Death, where there was no J-pop song playing at all, and it was Zack being heroic, but like in a different way, where he had tunnel vision trying to get Cloud out and saved, and then like he just got popped off by a few grunts, and then like I thought it was like way more emotional that like this guy trying to save the person we were playing as. Like he risked everything, and then just no music. He got like executed, and there was no speech. Cloud came to. He saw Zack was dead, and then like it just kind of fades out. I thought that affected me far more than seeing Crisis Core, because when I played that, the whole time I was saying, like with Aerith and Remake, where people are like, "Oh man, her death's gonna kill me." I'm like, "Oh, Zack's death is gonna kill me." Because like all of that, just like with much better graphics, oh, this is gonna be brutal. And then we get the J-pops, which I thought completely killed the tone of that. And then his heroic speech before he died about passing on his legacy and everything. I just that made me like actively dislike him. I think just from that last scene.
He's a definite tonal departure. I mean, definitely. But
yeah, and
But
I'm
again,
not saying
like my point is that Zack as a character he had zero development in the original. Yeah. So if we're remaking the original or requeling it, like Zack dying, I don't think is the big problem area, like per se. It's more that Zack no longer being dead has this bizarre impact on what death means in the universe, and that's the big threat. Like I don't care that Zack's alive, like on a raw story level, because I didn't grieve him in the OG. I will say that I had other issues with Crisis Core, which made me maybe not care as much. Like I don't know why Gact was in there. Like that was my main thing. It's like Gact ruined Zack being alive for me. But that's sort of beside the point. Like if Zack survives, but the other stuff still happens, I still think we've kind of told a pretty reasonable story about loss. And I make the same argument with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. You know, like we knew so little about those characters. Like they had like 5 lines of dialogue. I really didn't care that they died. I was like, oh man. And maybe I'm a sociopath or something, but I barely cared that they died. I was like, oh, they're a necessary plot progression device. Whereas in Remake, exactly. I really got to know the characters. So even losing one felt like a million times worse than losing all of Midgar, you know? And so, you know, that was, I think there's still room for that story of loss to be told without necessarily Zack dying, personally. But your next point, Night Sky?
Give me 1 second. Give me 1
ADHD.
second. No.
He's putting pants on.
Somebody asked me if I'm wearing pants under this.
Are you?
We'll find out at the end of this. Just gotta stay tuned.
I can't.
And only if you subscribe to BltZZ YouTube channel.
What's happening?
Reveal my secrets. Oh, yo, let me see that shirt.
NightskyPrince is you. Yeah, look at FishFriedCat's shirt.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Cloud is raining on Sephiroth. That's such a good shirt.
I've never seen that. Yo, that's dope.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. When roommates needed something out of my room. Anyway, we were talking about Zack's death, I believe, right?
Yeah, and how it's still intact because of the timeline shenanigans.
Oh yeah. So, I sort of agree with FishFriedCat that I got ratioed for this shit. But I got ratioed hard for this shit. I understand why Zack's heroic death in Crisis Core was more popular. It's the type of shonen trope death that people are really into. It's like a very heroic last stand type of thing. You watch a lot of shonen, you see this with characters all the time. It's a very popular trope, especially in Japan. Giving Crisis Core a full game, of course they would introduce that trope, because that's a better ending for a full-length video game than a dude more or less getting sniped when he got caught off guard, right? But I do actually agree that from an emotional impact and standpoint, for me, this dude seeing if his friend who is more or less tweaking out, and then all of a sudden these 2 guys just come by, and 3 guys actually come by and just ambush the hell out of him when he's completely off guard, and just pump a whole clip into him. That to me felt more human than the anime trope of The Last Stand, where he fights thousands of guys and basically Shinra more or less sends their like an entire fleet of troops to their death. Which I guess says enough about Shinra. But again, it's all nuance in the grand scheme of things. Like, I don't think that Zack's death as in Crisis Core being retconned to that versus the way it was presented in the original, which some people will argue because of technical limitations they couldn't render 1,000 soldiers, which is also, you know, it's neither here nor there for me. But I do like the idea of or it resonates a lot more for me to subvert that shonen trope and just show that, oh man, this guy was just like caring for his friend, and then all of a sudden, you know, pop. I think that's it also is a much more realistic depiction of war and actual like war heroes, what types of things actually happen in war, versus the shonen trope of well, you know, they sent 10 bajillion soldiers to fight him, and you know, out of those like 10 bajillion soldiers, he killed like 9 bajillion of them, and then the other 1 bajillion were still able to like push through. Yeah, so the actual him just being caught off guard and killed. Also, it makes Shinra seem like a little bit more competent in what they do, rather than sending, you know, half of their army to be slaughtered, um, only so that this one guy can, like, you know, to take down this one guy. It seems kind of crazy, but in either case, the point in both of those scenes remains the same. And the point is that potentially, you know, maybe Zack could have got away or defeated those soldiers, but because of the weight of Cloud trying to basically care for him and make sure that Cloud was okay, that he was not able to get away when he likely could have. And um, that's the big point. So while I strongly prefer the way the original scene is presented, I don't hate the way it's presented in Crisis Core. It just is a shonen trope, and if you're into that shonen trope, then you're into it, and you love the ending, and you love the J-pop. I could have done without the J-pop too. I think.
I forgot to play J-pop.
Yeah, but yeah.
I actually I liked it. I liked that song. I like the death scene. I do like the death scene. Yeah,
I do. I like the song too, just not at that scene.
Now, I do think what Crisis Core did that was absolute genius is the little Pachinko slots as you were doing that final battle, and then it was just going through like each character and then flashbacks.
That was actually really good. I remember having
that was an amazing way
to modulating phase. You're like so tired of hearing that. And then you're like realizing you're going to hear it for the last time. You're like, no, that was modulate genius. Phases forever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was directorially. That was one of the coolest things that Tabata ever did. He turned that super annoying, terrible mechanic, one of the worst mechanics in Final Fantasy. I'm sorry if anyone out there loves Digital Mind Wave. I don't even think Crisis Core fans actually like Digital Mind Wave, but it does pay off in the end in a really, really cool way. And directorially speaking, I think that was probably the coolest thing that Tabata ever did, especially when you actually start to feel Zack's controls become sluggish and you feel him actually dying. That's some Yoko Taro type thing, and I really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, you feel that shit. Like he's like, yo, dodge.
Yeah, you feel it. And also, I think that's those types of things are what made people really into Crisis Core and what made Zack's death impactful for the people who did love his character on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, now one of the things that people brought up on chat is that, you know, from the purpose of, so for Cloud's development, you know, it seems like no matter what, for Cloud development's sake, the Cloud that we're experiencing in whatever timeline they've ended up in did lose Zack. So he's still experienced the loss of Zack. That's why he has his own Buster Sword.
Right.
But I mean, to be clear, he actually didn't experience much of the death until he remembers it. So that's still upcoming. Like, the development of character that he has is more of a, you know, Genova copying elements of his personality through, you know, all the weird alien DNA stuff. So we haven't got to that part yet, and that's certainly something that they could screw up. And I think that before we move on from, like, should Aerith die, which has, you know, obviously diverted a little bit because we're all underslept because I beat Returnal last night, so that's where I'm at. And Returnal's about time loops, so I don't know. I'm not even sure if when this conversation is over, if I'm not going to loop back to the original Crash and Groundhog's Day and have to keep redoing this conversation. But does anybody have anything to say about Aerith dying before we move on to the next topic? Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, you know, there's gonna be, again, this also goes for Zack's death and goes back to sort of my whole thesis with everything that they've set up is that there's a lot of people that you will see, and they are just over the moon that she is not going to die, that they firmly believe that she is not going to die.
Yep.
And I think if you've ever watched, if anyone here as a big Evangelion fan, you know, the first two, especially the first Evangelion movie, was not controversial at all because it stuck to the plot for the most part, right? And it only teased that change could come, and people were open to it. It really wasn't until the last two movies that the Evangelion rebuilds became controversial. And so I'm just really curious to see how those people will react. And what I think is, I think that there's plenty of people who will be pleased either way. They just like, it's cool to be back in FO7's world. There's a lot of people like that, but there's also a lot of people who are not and have very specific expectations that have been set. And I'm just very interested to see how people are going to react once they actually have to deal with the reality of change. Right now, we only have the potential of change, but once you actually have the thing, you know, that's when people actually become that's when people start to become divisive, and that's why I say we're always like this close from that reality, one piece of information away from from everyone like breaking off into those factions.
Okay, so for our next topic, for our next question, I'm gonna ask, what is one thing that Remake, moving forward, the future parts of Remake, needs to deal with sacredly, meaning like either don't change it or improve it in a way that keeps it central to its core. So what is one thing that is absolutely crucial to the DNA of Final Fantasy Final Fantasy VII moving forward? What's a good scene? And what is one thing that they could do differently in Remake that they did in the original that would improve the story? And we'll start with Blitz.
Hey, I'm, you know, I'm kind of on the camp side that believes that Marlene's like lineage somehow is like, you know, she's part ancient, maybe from her mother, maybe she's like a quarter ancient or something. Because there's always this weird like dynamic between her and Aerith that goes all the way back to like Advent Children, even.
Yeah, and the OG.
And yeah, and the OG. And because at the end cutscene, she senses Aerith coming back, right? Or like the live stream from Aerith coming back. And so I think that because I love John Eric Bentley so much. I'm excited to see how he nails the Dine and Barrett scene. So one thing that I'm looking forward to, and I wouldn't mind them adding a little bit or changing, is maybe, I don't know if you guys would be on the same page too, but I do want to learn a little bit more about like Marlene's, you know, mother. What is she? You know, because obviously, like, we know what we know about Dine, and who knows, maybe Dine could be an ancient. We don't know that, but uh, it'd be cool to see, like, you know, during that scene with Barrett and Dine, the whole segment of whatever or however long they extended to, we get more backstory on Marlene and explanations for the reasons why she is the way that she is. Because in Remake, they clearly go to a certain length, like, you know, pushing it in our face that there's something unique about this girl. She touched Aerith, and in a similar fashion to like what Red 13 had happened to him, understood things, right? Like things were understood to them, and she calmed down, and she basically can see Aerith as, like, you know, a different being, not just like a regular person. So I think that there's some dynamic that can be, or I would like to see explored a little bit more in that aspect. As far as, like, you know, new things coming up and changing it up for either better or worse in Remake Part 2 or whenever that comes into play. I hope it's Part 2. And what was the other question you asked? Sorry.
What's something they could do? What's something they could do different or add to the story of Final Fantasy VII? Either either change, or that you would like to see, or is it so flawless you wouldn't touch
Move
a
that
word?
fucking snowboarding mission further down the line. That shit is way too soon.
Oh man, people have different ways to grieve.
Snowboarding mission. I was gonna make a joke about aerial combat, but you said story. But honestly, I wouldn't say the story is perfect. I said that in my video yesterday that like it's not the best Final Fantasy, and I personally think it's my favorite. And it's a lot of people's gateway RPG. A lot of people's very
Mhm.
first introductory to the genre, which was my very first introductory to the genre, was Final Fantasy VII. And while nostalgia may play into a lot of why I appreciate and love the game for what it is, there are things that do need to be changed. Specifically, I can't really think of it right now.
And you can interject later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll come back to that. But what I said before with like, adding that scene with like Marlene and giving her more of a backstory with her father,
Yeah.
I think that would be really kind of cool. Which I'm almost certain they'll do because they went to holy hell lengths to friggin' show off Jesse's parents to us.
Yeah. I
So
mean, yeah. Yeah.
could very well
I
be the case.
I wonder if that medical bed that Jesse's dad was on like ended up saving them. Like it just got stuck on some of the top plate as it collapsed, and they're just dangling there. Kate Sith came and saved him.
Nah, man. Broom Lady saved them.
Broom Lady. Broom Lady
Sector.
beat all of Wutai by herself. That's right.
Bro.
Thank you guys for following, and I heard other noises too. And wow, 81 of you. Thank you guys all for being here. NightskyPrince, what do you think? Moving forward, like part 2, what shouldn't they change? What should be part of the core DNA? Um, and then what's something that they could change coming up that
Oh,
or add to?
well, I mean, it is hard to say. I think
Yeah.
that the best place to have expanded would have actually been Midgar. Things like exploring the top plate or going harder into the socio-political structure of Midgar. But for part two, um, and even the fact that we're struggling to find things to add, really, because the original story was so well rounded, kind of shows how tightly written Final Fantasy VII story already was. I do think that going too deep into some stuff has also been the issue with the compilations writing, where
Mhm.
things became convoluted. No, I do think that there is some area to expand, and I think that they're already doing those things properly, like going deeper into Avalanche, going
Mhm.
deeper into Wutai. Those are
Mhm.
perfect things. I was super hyped up for
Intermission.
no, 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 but well, kind of actually, because
Yeah.
I was really hyped for the conflict that they set up with Wutai. I
Yeah.
thought that was genius. For me, that's what an expanded Final Fantasy VII universe meant in a proper sense, and not necessarily multiverse, right? Because for me, the conflict with Wutai adds so much more to the dynamics of the characters than say, let's revive this guy who died 2 months ago. Um, but I think a lot of the things that they've already decided to add outside of the arbiters, outside of the time stuff,
Mhm.
is already a great idea. Is
Yeah.
already like they're already going in a lot of the directions that I thought and wanted them to. A lot of people think, and I want to clarify this now. A lot of people think that I am a purist and that I was, which by the way, if you think that about me, you didn't watch any of my fucking videos.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
didn't watch any of them because I was like so like on it about like, oh man, I'm so excited for like all the things they're gonna add. I'm excited about Rosh. I'm excited about the Butai. I'm excited about going deeper into Avalanche and different factions. It's not about change and like any of the change is bad. In fact, so many of the changes that they made were good. Wall market, hello people.
Mhm.
Serious wall market is infinitely better in remake and infinitely more comfortable for a great degree of people.
Yeah.
It was brilliantly done. Combat is way better. Anyway, get back
Yeah.
on topic. I think the best thing you could do is a lot of things that they already have set up, and that is for me the two things in particular are going deeper into Avalanche and going deeper into Wutai. I think that going forward, more than anything, the thing that they need to focus on is the human aspects of what's going on. And I do think that Avalanche, what drives people to become radicalized, that's a very, very interesting conversation and commentary to have. That's what I want to see. So, and then they've already been teasing that with going deeper into Avalanche, right? So, what drives people to be willing to be able to commit eco-terrorism? That's a very fascinating topic, dude. And that's very human, and that explores a side of who we are in real life as people. The same thing with Wutai. We've seen that in politics so much with politicians coming up with reasons, you know, guises that go to go to war when in reality, you know, there's other reasons that they have to do it. Those human aspects of Final Fantasy VII are what made it so impactful in the first place,
Sure.
and those are the things that I want them to go absolutely ham on, because those are the things that make us still talk about Final Fantasy VII 24, 23, 24 years later now. Exactly. So, and that's what's more important. And I want them to focus on that. And whatever it is that they're setting up with the whispers and stuff, I want it to be more about that than to be just about FF7 being about FF7's lore, if that makes sense, and not about it actually being about the things that make FF7 FF7.
You wanted to expand and enrich the story even more in the sense of talking about the people that live within that world, because we love the world so much. We want to know more about it, you know? And I think I think that I don't know what they have planned for Fort Condor, but they've been mentioning it quite a lot recently. And I would really love to see Fort Condor expand even more on Avalanche going forward, which I think it most definitely will. I can see Barrett like fanboying over that entire place when he visits in part 2.
Yeah, if it
So
makes
that's
it in part
exciting.
2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let I'll go next. That way FishFriedCat can have the last word this time. And what I'll say is that the part that is the most sacred of the upcoming story to me is the Cloud's Mind segment. That I think is my favorite part of Final Fantasy VII, for a bunch of reasons. One, it reveals Cloud's true nature, and it reveals that the hero can come from this, young fraud, this character that's broken, and he went from being this kind of surreal trope to one of the most relatable protagonists in history. And there was a bunch socially about that was interesting. It was helped destigmatize mental illness. There's so much that's wrapped up into the Cloud's Mind scene that it's absolutely sacred to me. So moving forward, that's the scene that I think they can really, for me, break Remake. That scene was so critical to me, and I think it's one of those scenes that, for a new generation, is still really important. It's something that's important to tell, and I think that Final Fantasy VII, and this was said about the compilation titles, Final Fantasy VII is still Cloud's story. The other compilation titles are other characters' story. This is Cloud's story, and the DNA of Cloud's story comes from that exchange, from that scene. And they can do a lot to that scene to make it more expansive in the lore. I mean, probably we're going to see Sephiroth in there. We'll probably see Aerith in there. If she's dead by this point, we'll see. And but as long as it keeps that core DNA of letting us know what makes a hero, what the importance of choosing to be good regardless of your circumstances. It's what sets up Cloud as a foil to Sephiroth. Like, You know, Cloud and Sephiroth are both orphans. They both, you know, have had tremendously tragic paths, but the choices that they made were foils to each other. So it's this really important message of, you know, not letting the tragedy of your past define you, that there's still a chance if you surround yourself with friends, if you get support, you know, if you build a community around you, you can be carried up, that even heroes need help. You know, there's so much to the DNA of that scene that I think it's absolutely critical to Final Fantasy VII. And if they nail that, they can do a bunch of stuff wrong in my mind and still be okay. And we'll get to what's the threshold of how much they can do, you know, at the very end here. But as far as new stuff goes, there's a bunch of new stuff I want to see. I want to hear, and I like lore, I like compendium stuff. There's a bunch that I want to know and I want to see expanded on. I really, I am excited, and I know the chat's going to kind of maybe feel a certain way about this, but I think it's really important how they handle Sid, because Sid was pretty domestically violent in the OG, and we're sort of as the player just sort of supposed to look at that in this kind of, oh, that's just, he's a cheeky, like a honeymooner's way, like the way that stuff used to just be like kind of dumb humor. I don't want them to take that out. I don't want them to take out that Sid was grouchy and very abusive to Shara. I don't want them to take it out, but I do want them to address it. I want him to have to go through a real journey to own himself, and I want that to be you know, genuine and real. I think that there's a lot that can be done in there that tells a story that kind of redeems that. And if I have any faith that the team can take something that didn't age well, it's in Honeybee Inn. Like the way that Honeybee Inn was originally depicted to where it is now, it's incredibly beautiful and inclusive. And so I'm hoping that they're, you know, going to treat Sid in a way that doesn't just wash it away. You can't wash that away. They did that. And so a way for them to take ownership of the fact that they included that in their game is to keep it in the game and then now take ownership through the vehicle of Sid taking ownership of how he was. That's just, you know, my opinion. In terms of lore stuff, I do hope we see some new locations, at least in sort of referential way. I hope we get more of Roche, and it sounds like we're going to, because I think he has an interesting story to tell about what happens with Soldier moving forward, like official Soldier, because there's a lot to be said about that topic, the topic of what happens with the military, particularly the paramilitary, and because of the anti-capitalist message of Final Fantasy VII. Actually, I think good stories can be told in that topic. And then, should they answer the question as to who Cloud's father is? Should they answer some of these other weird, deep things like, you know, about Rufus, some of these age-old mysteries, lore stuff? Should we have Minerva involved? I hope so, but I certainly understand if that's kind of a minority opinion. I love that kind of lore stuff. I love the callbacks to mythology. I love all of the deep connections they do. So I would like to see personally more of that stuff. The things that make Final Fantasy VII really, really rich. Like one of my favorite details of Remake was the at the end of Top Secrets you get Götterdämmerung, which is essentially a German remake of Ragnarok, the Norse mythology, and like little nods like that, which are just brilliant little bits of lore. Those are the kind of really neat callbacks that somebody that plays, you know, like a game for 500 hours will enjoy. So I'm hoping for that. FishFriedCat.
Yes. All right, so I know NightskyPrince said a lot of what I would have said, and I agree with. Like with handling new stuff, I think, and I agree with what everything you said about Sid, because I've been kind of saying the same thing in conversations with Prince, where I think the wall market thing was done beautifully. I'm confident that if they can handle it in that way, they can take something like Sid, who really is not a great guy. Just because I even felt uncomfortable back then watching the way he treated Shara. And um, I was always wondering why, like, Cloud or Tifa and no one else just kind of didn't step in to do anything. I hope to kind of see that, or just something that'll help guide Sid just to, you know, come around and then, turn him around into being a likable character. Um, I do really enjoy like what they did with bringing Wu Tai, like having the even the made up political reasons, though it doesn't seem all that made up now because with intermission, Yuffie and Sonon are in there, so it does seem like Wu Tai is actually interfering in Midgar. So in a weird way, it kind of justifies Shinra. But I really love seeing more stuff like that. Really want to see more of Avalanche. I don't know what exactly I would want to see different in like future parts, because I know like in the first part of remake I was kind of expecting, and I know some people or most people don't like this, but GTA style Midgar where you can go travel lower top plates and all that. I just Midgar was my favorite spot, so I was hoping like if we're gonna have a 40-hour game dedicated to Midgar, that we'd get to see more than just like I think it was just Jesse's parents' house was kind of like the only new area, if I can remember. And I don't even think we even got to that like 1950 style New York area of Midgard that they showed in the cinematics. Because kind of after that, I don't really the locations never really stood out to me other than like Gold Saucer or even like Wu Tai. I'm excited to see. I don't know how they're going to handle like Yuffie, the conflict between Yuffie and her father. I'm really excited to see how that plays out. If or if it's just going to be like entirely different because Shinra might be invading the town at the time or something. Um, there's there's a reason why my content is heavily scripted because I'm not good with off the cuff stuff like this. But
I think you're
I don't
doing
know.
great, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You are.
But like a lot of the stuff Prince said, because me and him think similar. Like he'll have the more bigger brained ideas than me, while I'm just kind of like, but that's how it is. Like, it was a really bad idea giving me the final word on this one, but yeah, I don't know.
Fine,
Like,
dude.
oh, fine, but I don't know what I could see them doing better. It's kind of like they have to give it to me and I can go, oh, I didn't know I wanted this. Kind of like when you make videos and about something, like people didn't know they wanted. So that's what I'm kind of like looking forward to seeing from future parts of remake, and just if they change, I'm perfectly fine with like big changes. I was kind of hoping that Rosh would be the final boss of part one, because it would have been perfect with the whole Midgar Expressway and then just the motorcycle fight. And if you're having a multi-part series, I don't think that you need to end it in this big climactic way that a single part JRPG would do. Like ending it with Rosh, and like whether it is a one-on-one or a 3v1 fight, like I think they could. I trust that they could have done it perfectly because the boss fights were my favorite part of the game. Um, so it's just I don't know what I want going forward. Remake, they have to basically give me what I didn't know I wanted. Is going to be my answer for that.
That's a good point, and I think that's something that's easy to forget is that this is an established franchise, but the future's now opened up, and so in the same way that a lot of people are now filling the open-endedness of the ending with what they want to happen. There's also a segment of the populace that cannot imagine a good scenario, and so there's this tendency to make what's called an argument from incredulity. It's a logical fallacy where you also called an argument from ignorance, but that's got like a connotation to it, where you make an assumption based on something you can't imagine. And I think we have to remember that since none of us are the creators, there are in fact things that we haven't even thought of for stories that could come and just blow us away. And I'm at this point, I'm satisfied enough with most of what's happened in Remake to say that this team is capable of doing that. Now, if I were to but that's only if I take Remake in a vacuum. If I look at each individual staff member, then I get a little bit more skeptical. But that's kind of beside the point, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily very helpful to the conversation. But this remake did do a lot of things that surprised me in a good way, and so I'm hoping that no matter how many degrees I have, I cannot imagine things that they're gonna implement into Final Fantasy VII Remake. And an example of that is actually like the DLC. I expected DLC, despite Nomura saying there's not going to be DLC. I did not expect this DLC. I'm pretty impressed with what Intermission and Intergrade has already shown us. I'm really excited about that. And that's something that I didn't really. Of all the things that they were going to do for DLC, dead last on my list was Yuffie showing up in Midgar in a way that is canonically okay. Like, it doesn't interfere with the OG at all. So I was pretty impressed with that. So okay, moving on to a different topic. Nier, you guys ready?
Yeah.
So okay, I am gonna just spend we'll spend 15 minutes talking about Nier. Have you guys all played Nier Replicant, and are you guys super excited?
Yeah, loving it.
Loving it so far. Loving it so
far. You're when you learn out that it is such sadness porn once you get to Route B. It's like, oh, this delicious sadness. I'm not gonna spoil it for those people.
Just them opening up with Kaine's backstory, and even though it's part of the text adventure thing, and I was just reading it out loud, and I was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. And I never thought a game that would make me literally just read flat text with no images, and occasionally music would naturally sort of come in as I was reading it. I did not expect it to grip me so much, just basically reading a novel on my screen, and it took me an hour to actually get through.
Januzzi, thank you. It took you an hour to read? Well, yeah, because you read out loud. Okay, guys, another quick plug for NightskyPrince. If you ever want to experience a game that's very text heavy, watch it on NightskyPrince's channel. Go check out his VOD, because he'll read it all for you. Because I'll be honest, I get a little bit skippy with reading when it turns into a novel in Nier. So yeah. Egg with Feelings, I will be doing a Nier talk show. I think NightskyPrince might be involved in that or be facilitating it. We'll figure that out later.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
For sure. But anyways, I went and looked at your VOD to watch you read the Kaine story, and it was the best telling of that story I've ever heard, was watching you read it. So all of y'all, go check that out.
Yeah, thank you so much. I actually really enjoy reading out aloud. So now that I stream, I'm able to read these stories out loud, because obviously I'm more of an audio learner. I talk about this a lot. It's why anime fans hate me, because I always watch English dub. Because one of the things that I pick up on more than just what's being said is that I'm really insight. I read into people's inflections a lot of words, and so a lot of times I'll read things out loud so that I could also put my own inflection on it, and that helps me actually understand what I'm reading more when I'm able um, to put my inflection and my intonation on there and almost really voice act out. And so I will read out loud every single piece of text that I come across in a game to reinforce that to myself.
Yeah, you know, a game has a lot of reading you can do.
You better not say Cold Steel on Beat Your Ass.
Cold Steel.
Cold Steel. Let's go.
Xenogears.
Xenogears does have a lot of reading.
Disc 2 has a lot of reading.
Yeah. I don't mind it anymore as long as I get to read out loud.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
I do like different voices and stuff too. Like everybody loves the Bugenhagen voice. I give like Bugenhagen in FF7 the Arnold voice goes instead of saying ho ho ho, I go
Oh man, hell yeah.
But it's so funny, man. It's just that's what I think I love about like streaming now, like especially these old school games, because like you said, the inflection, like everybody reads it differently or interprets it differently, but you get to put your own little spin or a twist on it or dive a little bit deeper into that. And I really can't wait to get to that part in Nier. The one of the recent ones, like in Xenogears, there's a character named Rico, and he basically looks like Blanca. He's green and he has red hair and he's a beast. Like he looks like Blanca from Street Fighter. So I was giving him this like deep voice talking like this as him. And everybody was like, nah, like he needs a more like badass voice. It's not badass enough. I'm like, what? My Solid Snake's not like good enough for you guys? So I was like, all right, I got you. I'll give him the best voice. So I started talking like this as the character the whole time, as we were playing the game, like giving him like all this like and rolling like Rico every time he would talk. And it became like this big meme for like the whole segment. And I think that's one of the best parts about these old school games and seeing that reappear in like new school games as well. Just the different dialogues, like being able to read that to the chat and stuff. I think that's a really fun aspect to explore.
So actually, in my interview with Sakaguchi, which for those of you who don't know, I interviewed Hironobu Sakaguchi recently. That's coming up on YouTube. I actually talked with him about this, and what he described that as is that he called it negative space. I found that really interesting. He said that games without voice acting or without the cutscene animations, what you have is this thing called negative space where players are able to insert their own imagination into how certain scenes and certain voice acting, quote unquote, would be if it were there. And part of that was such a huge part of, I think, what made us love the Final Fantasies of the heyday was that we would just have Cloud doing like these little block and things, or saying these really expressive like lines of text, and then we'd sort of have to read into it in our own way. And actually, going back to FF7R, one of the things that actually impressed me the most with that game was how a lot of that character dialogue actually did sort of match the voice and the way I would have imagined those characters saying it, which speaks a good testament to how much research they did into their own characters before delivering them. And this was something that Philip's saying in chat, that this is why everyone views 7 differently. It's kind of like, and I don't want to like necessarily put a video game on this level, but it kind of is. It's almost like the way like people are with like various like religious texts, because everyone like reads it differently, and so it seems like everyone thinks that they have the exact reading of that text. Like everyone thinks, yes, I have read read the text the exact way. And that's also, I guess, what makes book clubs and those types of things so interesting, is because when people read text, it's very lucid and everyone interprets it and imagines it in with their own self-directing,
right, the filter of their own experiences.
All right. And for some people, that inherently makes any adaptation of a book disappointing
Right.
because they read it and then they're like, that is not how it was. But
Yeah.
even if it was or wasn't, you know, the way their mind imagined, your mind can imagine it as good as possible. And this is also why, you know, certain mysteries can be so powerful within stories too, because you know whatever the viewer's mind imagines is always the perfectly fit thing to scare them or make them more satisfied or whatever the emotion that they're trying to inspire is with that mystery.
Definitely. And I think that you know, this is a Final Fantasy VII Remake stream, and I am bringing up Nier. And now's a good time, by the way, for the audience. We're gonna be ending this pretty promptly at 1 p.m. Pacific Delta time, so that that we can raid Final Fan TV's stream. But now is a good time. If you guys have input or questions for us, you can start asking it, directing at any one of us. But I would just recommend you highlight the message if possible, so that we get some visibility. But on the topic of Nier and how it relates to Final Fantasy VII Remake, you know, they're both action RPGs. One, there's a lot of philosophy and mythology centered in all of that, but they do have some, you know, key differences. One is that, you know, the characters, you know, the character development in Nier is actually it uses what you would call opaque characters. They don't really have backstories. They're not really developed characters per se. What makes their characters great is just their momentary experience. You can almost immediately connect with what they're feeling and what with loss. Like, you know, you feel the sadness for these characters you don't know, because it's just that's the way that Nier does it. Nier uses it uses the emotions to propel your connection to the character instead of the character to propel your connection to the emotion, which is the way that, you know, Final Fantasy VII does it. It's a known difference in storytelling style. But one of the things that Nier does really well is meta commentary, and I do want to bring that up. That one, I think that a lot of people felt personally attacked that the Whispers even existed, but I can probably promise you that the developers did not create the Whispers like to offend anybody. They didn't create the Whispers to be representative of the OG fans, even if that can be interpreted that way. Some people took it that way. Like, the Whispers are not the bad guy in the story. So, and a lot of people, I think, felt that the fans were the bad guys in the story, and that's how they took it. And let's just remember that the Whispers did save Barrett's life. So if you are, as a fan, the Whispers, thank you for saving Barrett's life in the party several times. So I think the point that I'm trying to make, though, is that it did involve a metaverse, right? And in my humble opinion, they aren't really excelling in the meta department. I think they can tell a story about like multiple timelines without it getting too meta, without involving the audience, without making a bunch of in-jokes. Personally, I hope that they lean a little away from that moving forward. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, I mean, you know how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree though that that I would hope that they move away from it too. And I also completely agree that the idea of the Whispers being purist fans of the OG to just be completely bunk, I can't really imagine. Like, it's like me as a YouTube channel, right? And I have a lot of people who support my channel, will follow me into the earth. I'm so grateful for you guys. Love you guys to death. Even if you guys don't always agree with me or my opinions or where I take my channel or what I do, you guys are still there for me, and I love you to death. And I'm sure that Nomura and Kitase and those people feel the same way about their fans, probably to an even greater level because they've been doing their shit for decades, right? So the idea that they would create a meta commentary that tells those people who may have differing takes to F themselves. I cannot even for a second entertain that as a real idea. I think that is definitely not the intention. I think that people who are so eager about the new direction have inserted that for their own purposes because they want to tell those people to F themselves. But it is absolutely not Nomura, Kitase, Hamaguchi, Toriyama, those people saying to those people who, and I mean, look at like classic mode, for example. They were so like, oh, we really want people who enjoyed turn-based combat or the original game's combat to enjoy the combat here. If that's how they felt, do you really think they would insert a commentary that tells those same people to also F themselves? Think about this, people.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It does not make any sense at all whatsoever for that to be the commentary. Nor would that be a great commentary to make if that was true. That would be almost abusive to tell your to tell some of your fans. Like, yeah. So I mean, if you are really fans of Kitase and Nomura and Nojima, you should not believe that. That makes them look like bad people. Yeah,
that was just a bunch of angry people on Reddit because I first read it on Reddit and I'm like, what? I was like, I mean, I get what they're trying to say, but it's like that's just like a really negative way to go about it, like the way that they were talking about it in that sense.
Right, and that's a divisive way. That's basically telling fans to go to war with each other, which I don't think is the message. Like, let's give them more credit than assuming that they want fans to eat each other alive, or that they think that a certain group of fans should just like F off and not be a part of it. I cannot imagine any creator that has survived as long as they did and have as many games published as they did and have established such a multi-million like follower count fan base would actually conceive that sort of idea.
And yet here we are.
And yet here we are, Nature Boy RIC.
That's great because even when you delete it, it just does not go away. Oh my god, that's
the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's amazing. That won't be in the VOD, thankfully, but actually it will because the VOD will have the text chat on the side. So, but if they're watching on
it's going on YouTube. YouTube only.
Oh,
okay,
awesome.
Well, now I have to. Yeah.
They don't know what we're talking about, probably, and that is for the best.
Okay. So we've got some questions, but before we do, does anybody have anything to say about meta commentary, or are we all in agreement that you should just let Yoko Taro do the meta and then
I would say one more thing.
Yeah,
is that I do think that there is a meta commentary, but I do think the meta commentary is centered more around the idea of doing things differently, or if you could go back and in time to a certain point in your life, would you make the same mistakes? I do think that is the actual meta commentary that they're making, which is why they're actually trying to introduce the time elements and having informed characters.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's like
there's precedent for that in OG, because again, this is heavily draws on Norse mythology and like something that you brought up with Steins Gate. I mean that there's these elements of destiny that are fixed, and that's the way that the Norse view time. But ironically, in Final Fantasy VII, we've got these two competing life systems, that are represented. We've got something that represents, classic mythology, Norse mythology, Greek mythology. That's the old world. That's, the Cetra, even the humans. And then we've got this new invasive force that comes in that has more relationship with Christianity and Judaism and stuff like that, and the way that they view time is in fact differently. And so you're seeing that struggle play out in the way that Aerith is talking about destiny, talking about her own fate, even talking about saying goodbye to Cloud and stuff like that. Is more representative of that Norse look, like a tapestry of fate, like Steins Gate. And then you've got Sephiroth, who's more about like the will to power and empowering himself with the Sephiroth, the manifestations of Einsoft, to change his destination. And so you are looking at those two competing things there. And I would agree that there's definitely meta commentary in that conversation, but it is not like they're making these fourth wall jokes, and they're not, this is not, we're not Deadpooling this, nobody's looking at the camera and saying, fuck you fans. Like that's definitely not happening.
And my thing is that how is someone wrong for having their own ideal remake? Everyone, I'm sure, including the developers themselves. I mean, we actually know, because Kitase had his idea of what remake meant. Nomada had his idea of remake meant. So that's that idea again of people who do have a purist mentality. They're still not technically wrong, because there's a lot of people, even on the dev team, they talked about how a lot of the younger developers actually had a purist mentality when creating it. So
that's right.
Nobody's desires or what they want out of this game are inherently wrong, and that's what people forget.
Yeah.
It's just,
that's also why it all goes back to that saying, the reunion at hand may bring joy, or whatever the hell the line was. Some people are going to like this and some people are not, and that's regardless of what they do, even if it was a purist remake, because everyone has interpretation, and nobody really fully agrees on what that is. So,
and that's what makes us all like humans at the end of the day. It's like being able to have different ideas or different ways to process the way things, I guess, should or should not be. And that's one of my favorite things about like interacting with like, people like in live chat or something, like everybody has a different perspective of whatever it is. And a lot of people may see your perspective and agree on it, and not necessarily say, hey, this is my new headcanon now, but also take inspiration from that and follow across it. And I think that's the way I've always looked at Remake. It's just like, yeah, but it's a whole team that's making it, and they all had to agree on this perspective that they're going in. And of course, you got to admit, like, there's people in the team that probably are working on this game that are probably like, oh man, I wish they did this instead. It's natural for sure. I just think that I think that what the future has in store for us with this game is obviously undecided. Nobody knows what direction it's going to be going in, but I don't see it as something that's gonna inherently like not divide the fan base, but just like cause a shitstorm where like everybody's attacking. Oh, you like this? I fucking hated that part. I'm not talking to you anymore. Like I just think it's weird when people like feel that way, because like some individuals, and I'm not like calling any particular person out. It's just some people got to learn to really like respect and love other people. I don't know why this is something that you got to like learn. Like most of us are like adults now. It's weird that some people don't. Because I mean, I read comments sometimes, and sometimes I get some real weird shit thrown my way, and I know for a fact NSP has had it worse. But it's we all love this game. We all love these characters. Yes, we might not agree, I guess, in certain aspects when things go down, but ultimately, it's not the end of the world. Some people really go lose their shit over it, and it blows my mind still to this day.
Yeah.
What do you think, FishFriedCat?
I think I'm trying to avoid all the outside noise that's going on at this house.
We don't hear anything, so you're
good.
Oh, that's because I muted myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nah, it's that Discord noise canceling, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was kind of like half hearing and then like trying to go, oh, okay, when are they gonna stop? But could you repeat
There's not even a
question?
question really. We were just talking.
Or just,
but you know,
okay.
I do have some questions, and people have been kind enough to highlight messages, etc. And so we have one from John Ron 2000 who says, "Guys, do you think FF7R will reference Minerva or use the concept of the goddess in any ways, and in what ways would it make sense?" Do you guys do you want me to start on this, guys?
You can start. I have a lot to say about this too, but I'll let you go.
Minerva is a really interesting character. One of my favorite characters, one of my favorite parts about Crisis Core, because what Minerva represents is something that's sort of in between good and evil. It sort of puts the planet in a position of neutrality, whereas it's not as simple as planet good, Genova bad. It's really not that simple. A couple of interesting things about what Minerva is. Minerva is mythologically a very fascinating character because she represents this bizarre bridge between old mythology and her depiction and her story gets referenced a lot. And in comparative mythology, there are a lot of lines to be drawn. And I'm not saying any of this is factual. This is not an anti-religious message at all, but a lot of lines can be drawn between the character of Mary, the Virgin Mary, and Minerva. And so from a lore perspective, especially from Nojima's point of view, what Minerva can kind of represent is this bizarre middle ground between the planetary Cetra and Genova, of all things. And on the mural, there's some interesting things to note. And it does appear that there's Cetra that seem to represent, like kind of the pure light, the yellow. But there are also some Cetra that kind of represent the shade of gray, so to speak. And Minerva is kind of appears to be like chromatically and thematically their voice. And when asked what Minerva is, she is the voice of the planet, essentially, in dev interviews. And that's why now that Genesis is involved, Genesis is Minerva's champion. So what Genesis would potentially represent is what Minerva represents. Are they going to bring that into Final Fantasy VII Remake? I think there will be elements of it as early as intermission and intergrade. Do I think it will make a huge impact on the plot? No, I don't think it'll change the plot implementation, but it will provide context for the relationship that humanity has with the planet, its environment, the relationship that the Cetra has with the planet and its environment, and how things like good and evil are actually concepts completely independent of that struggle. So I think that her inclusion, Genesis's inclusion, will be something just more to provide context and not something that actually shapes or changes events. That's just my take. Okay, guys?
Personally, oh man, if Owen was on here, he would strangle me to death. I hate Minerva. I don't like the idea of a goddess in Final Fantasy VII whatsoever. In fact, what was so great to me about FF7? Oh, he is here. Hello, Owen. Hello, I'm here. You're gonna kill me, Owen. And this actually goes back to what I mean about a lot of people's ideal remakes and what they've opened up being diametrically opposed. Because for Sleep Easy, he would bust like the biggest nut ever if Minerva showed up. And for me, I would like snap my controller in half. So it's going to be interesting to see how how that's reconciled. But anyway, what I don't like about the idea of Minerva, or really just any god or goddess in Final Fantasy VII in any capacity, was that that's it's a JRPG cliche. And Final Fantasy VII has avoided a lot of those cliches, which is what made Final Fantasy VII almost become the new cliche itself. But even to this day, Final Fantasy VII still has a lot of ways of just not being like the way other JRPGs are. And I feel like the way that just how frequently utilized that trope is, I think it's just so cool to play a JRPG where there are no gods or goddesses that are just like working in the background. There's a man, of course, Sephiroth, trying to become a metaphorical god, but I don't like the idea of a manifestation of a real god. And I love the idea that it's more of a take on like the Eastern philosophy of life and death, and it's more of a secular discussion with FF7 while also having spiritual undertones. But that being said, Minerva will absolutely show up and play some type of role in some capacity, just because of how much compilation material has already surfaced and become its own part of Remake. I can't see them omitting something like Minerva.
Yeah, and so to be clear though, I do just want to have a minor nitpick is that it's the terminology that we're using, goddess, a lot of that has to do with some localization issues. Really, like what I think the best way to describe what Minerva is she's more like a weapon. That's
interesting.
That's what she is.
A very cute weapon.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess, I guess the reason so much of the framing is around her being the goddess is because of Genesis as well. So,
right.
I mean, is that localization too?
This is an interesting thing about the localization. In the Japanese version of Crisis Core, the statue of Minerva looks like the Virgin Mary. They changed it for the localization to not offend the West.
Right. And that also kind of goes into what I was saying too, is that she is sort of held in like this light of divinity, which I kind of have mixed feelings about, because FF7 doesn't really have divinity in the same sense that you would expect it.
Well, I mean, Sephiroth is.
But there's him as a mortal man ascending to something that would be described as divine, right?
Well, I mean, his name means the emanations of God.
Right. Well, you get what
I kind of do get what you're saying. It feels less tropey. Yeah, it feels very less tropey. Yeah, it's only the third battle that he gets 6 wings and looks like an angel. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's plenty of Judeo-Christian references in
sure.
FF7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please don't misunderstand. I'm saying that. Oh yeah, Judeo-Christianity is not enough. Like, it plays a huge role in everything in FF7, but it was not played in the same tropes that we would see within JRPGs, especially like leading up to that point. Obviously, Sephiroth does try to become a god, but the sort of traditional Western concepts of divinity aren't like there. Like, it's not like Etro is part of
I mean, I know what you're saying. What you're saying is there's a definite feeling difference, and there's a lot of people in the chat now highlighting things like, well, what about the church? Blah blah blah. There is definitely a difference in feeling between Final Fantasy VII. It's so stark, and like it's set at such a distance that it doesn't feel like that's what it's talking about. Even if the themes are there, it doesn't feel like it's employing that trope the way. And so I agree with what you're saying, and I think there is a way that they can introduce Minerva and the whole goddess concept that will feel really tropey. And I definitely don't want that at all. I totally get what you're saying. Do you guys have any?
So far, we haven't heard. I don't think it's too tropey, but it definitely could be played that way, and that's my biggest concern.
God, if I have another 3-hour battle of just goblin punching Minerva, I'm gonna I'd be pretty upset about that.
All of this is
Blitzer.
like going completely. I've played the compilation, or at least loosely pieces of it, but
Uh-huh.
I can't recall when was Minerva. Like, yeah, I
Minerva
really
is
have no idea.
Minerva is the secret boss fight in Crisis Core, but also she's the goddess that's referred to in Loveless.
There's a
If you
secret
want, I
boss
can
fight in
recite it
Crisis
for
Core.
you.
What the fuck?
It's probably the hardest boss fight in the compilation. Well, I don't know.
The hell?
Yeah, she's got
How do
like
you unlock
10
it?
million HP. Yeah, it's bananas.
So Zack beats God, but he can't beat Shin. I'm joking.
It is a little bit irritating that well you don't
But
even
it's a
beat
rock,
her.
paper,
You don't
scissors
even
thing.
beat her. You just like make her go away. She's like I'm bored, and then just floats away. For more information on Minerva, please check out Sleep Easy's videos.
Hey.
Hey, do you have any Minerva talk other than that you're thirsty for, FishFriedCat?
That's all the talk I need. If she shows up looking like a cute ass waifu weapon,
Google
all I
image
need,
it
man.
real quick.
No, my views on it are the same as always, same as Prince's. Like whether or not references were made, I never and yeah, everybody has their own kind of view on Seven. I never felt that Seven was uh religious, like or had like these religious overtones or anything. And yeah, and it was like Sephiroth using like these alien genes to ascend to what we would think is a god.
Yeah,
And
the
as for like
aliens, by
his
the
name
way,
on,
named Genova, which means the new god.
look, man, Hojo is a very eccentric man. Like, of course, he would name his child something like Sephiroth.
Sephiroth.
I love Hojo. I hope we see more of him. Like,
Hojo, they did Hojo right. Like he is so greasy.
when
Yeah.
he was talking to Aerith through that breeding pod that somehow didn't show up in Remake. But when he was talking to her about like having what remnants of her mother, and he was just like nutting over it, I'm like, yes, this is the Hojo I was hoping for.
Bro, that man, they made Hojo look like the duck from freaking The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh
Little duck
yeah,
doctor. They have the same lips and
that is
everything too.
dead on.
I am
And
Googling Minerva, and
I
I've
think
never
Lucrezia
seen this
picked
character
right.
before.
Okay.
Jeez.
Okay.
That is, well, looks like I gotta replay Crisis Core.
Just wait for the remake.
Yeah.
Okay, from Giannuzzi, I hope FF7R gives more player choice. What do you guys think about player choice as a potential thing in Remake?
I love it. I want unique playthroughs. Well, to a certain extent, I don't know how far Square would take it because they've never really gone outside of it. But I would like to see character choices make each playthrough for different players unique in a sense, to a certain degree. Like, the simplest way they could do it is like the relationship way. But I don't know. It's like Night Sky Prince told us the other day. He just doesn't make, like, it feels like the relationship. You can't choose really your waifu. You're on a predetermined path, and yeah, you might go on a date with this one, or you might do this with this one, but it's always just like the same thing, really. Can live without it. But I would like to see more choices in the sense that, like, okay, if I choose to save, I don't know, like if I choose to save this dude in this town, will he come back later in the story and like, affect something directly that'll like, be either negative or positive for me? I'd like to see more of those decisions made in Remake, like going forward, and just, more RPGs really, because at the end of the day, that's like, what you want in an RPG. It's a role playing game, and you're not just playing as the character, you're also envisioning this world, and you want to feel like your decisions and your choices are shaping this world, whether it's for the better, whether it's for the worst, or I want them to take that leap and do that, whether or not, like, uh it's a little extreme, but somebody was talking about this before, like, depending on which girl you are more closer to, or like you have more relationships point with, you'll see their dialogue change up a little bit more. You'll get more interactions and more scenes with them, but also it'll make that one die. you know
That's very Yoko Taro. That's how you would do a dating sim. The one you love most is the one that dies.
yeah. So I think that I would like it if to see, like, Square do that, and not just for like relationships, like I'm saying. It's just like I want to see it like I don't know whether or not it's a specific item you get or a materia that you get, like something that you can't obtain all in one playthrough. That separate playthroughs are required, and you can like have this appear, like you have a save file with this, you have a save file with that, but it's all exclusive to whatever decisions you make, in a sense. If you guys know what I mean.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I I've been burned on Mass Effect with as far as decisions goes, because like while you're playing the story, like yeah, you can faction with these people, and then they'll show up like later on, and then other people won't show up and all that. But like at the end, none of those choices ended up mattering, and I think that would be really hard to do anyway. So like as long as it was like really small choices, kind of like what part one had, like where Tifa and Aerith were both laying on the ground after you fell in the sewers for the first time, and then you just pick to choose, you choose which one you want to help up. Relationship is probably the easiest way to do choice, I think. And then yeah, like having some people, if you save him there, he shows up later, and like you get this. There may be like some side quest that shows up, and you get this awesome weapon or whatever from it. But I don't know if there's like many games where like the choices you make actually affect the ending in like some significant way, at least.
The only one I could think of off the top of my head is The Witcher 3.
Boy, me and Prince have a friend who probably screaming right now since you mentioned that, and I need to play it so we can get him to play both Nier games.
I feel like he's just gonna like pop up in the chat like when you
Oh,
say
I guarantee he will.
It's
every time The Witcher 3 is mentioned, he has like a way of just showing up. Like he manifests out of like
we've
dust and
summoned him.
Yeah, if you go, oh, if only some certain people would play, and I'd always just reply, man, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So,
Yeah.
so we kind of have to wrap up here in 6 minutes, but I do want to just say that player choice is a great topic. MJ Gallagher personally thinks that player choice will determine whether or not Tifa or Aerith dies, which would be bananas. I don't think they're going to do that, but it's pretty hard to do a choice story where like things as consequential as which character survives. Happens, or if there's like a one good ending where you can save everybody ending. I think Mass Effect is probably the best example of that, and I actually like Mass Effect as a series. I just don't think that it's kind of hard to bring those two worlds together. I don't think that works with a pre-established narrative, personally.
It was not an easy task at all.
What do you think,
well, the thing
Ryan?
about yes. The thing about doing like the choose your own narrative style is that more or less they would have to be building almost two separate games at that point. And this is easier to do with visual novel style games. So if you have something like Fire Emblem Three Houses, where you have four different campaigns, but everything is told through these very nicely done, but it's still visual novel style
Yeah.
scenes. It's really easy to build out all those different paths. When you have a AAA game, however, and you have to account for the cutscenes aren't as templated.
Yeah.
In fact, they're not templated at all in AAA games. They are like basically Hollywood level scenes that are being used. Implementing something like Tifa or Aerith dying basically means like twice the game's budget. That's basically effectively what you'd be doing. You'd be increasing the cost of the game and doing all these other things. Also, that the player can feel that impact, but I think that there are other ways in which the player can feel that impact without the budget having to be doubled. And I can guarantee you that developers are look at those ways long before they would look at something like Tifa or Aerith dying, especially if they have to make an additional game after that death.
Yeah.
Because basically the only way that would be feasible to do is if you moved Eric's death to the very
third
end.
game.
Yeah, it's like the very end of the game, like the whole series, and then you made like 2 different endings that branch off.
Otherwise you'd have to make 2 different games, basically.
Yeah. You'd have to basically redo all the cutscenes.
Yeah,
because
it'd be like Pokemon Red and Blue, but for Aerith and Tifa.
Right, exactly. And that's why those games that primarily use text to communicate, it was really easy for them to do those sort of branching paths. But it becomes very difficult for a AAA game like FF7R to do that. I cannot imagine. I honestly don't think, given who is directing this, Creative Business Unit 1, and given their history of this type of style that they prefer, I cannot imagine them leaning that hard into player choice. The only time that they actually really did that was Final Fantasy 13 2, and that's because they were almost making a point out of it, like an example out of 13 2, because of the overwhelming feedback about Final Fantasy 13. Aside from that, player choice has never been a big emphasis for Creative Business Unit 1.
Definitely.
And not for the games that Hamaguchi and Toriyama have worked on. So I don't see that playing a role. Although it would be cool, but I don't see it playing a role. I don't think it'll be as linear, as the structure going forward will be as rigid. There will be a lot more room for player freedom, at least in terms of where you're exploring and what you're doing at any given moment. But I don't expect like dialogue trees, like really complicated dialogue trees, like most of the game, or any type of BioWare type situation. I can't imagine.
Definitely. So we've got 2 minutes left, and so I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here. I feel like we probably could have talked about this a lot longer, but alas, we are out of time. You guys have all been great. You guys are just great guys, and great content providers. Thank you for giving us. I want to give a special thanks to NightskyPrince for coming on here and being kind of vulnerable here with this, and I also really I think you established yourself as where you're really at, and people I think really see. I think I hope that you still get to be a voice for Final Fantasy VII moving forward.
Me too.
And I certainly value your opinion a lot, and value you as a content creator. FishFriedCat, you're a genuinely funny dude, and I every time I even hear that you're working on something, I get real excited. So
I appreciate
it. You're always welcome here, and I'd love to do anything you need from me. I will do voices badly. I will put on a Nier helmet. Whatever you need from me, you're the best. I got you. Blitz,
I love you, buddy.
I love you too. Blitz, thank you for being here again. I feel like you've really come through. For your community is so solid, so strong, so positive, and that's what we want from this community. I'm constantly amazed at how supportive your fans are of everything you tell them to be, and that's a reflection of who you are and what your character is like.
Man, thank you.
You guys are just the best, and I hate to cut you off because you have such valuable stuff to say, and you're so valuable to the community. But speaking of somebody else that's really valuable to the community, Final Fan TV is live now, and I'd really like us all to go raid, go subscribe, go follow, go throw gift subs at them. They're trying to do something similar, just build a community right now, and he had the opportunity, just like NightskyPrince, to interview Hironobu Sakaguchi-san, and so he's going to have a little bit of a discussion about that right now. So I'm going to start this raid because I also don't know how to say bye other than to tell all of you, that I love you. And so I'm going to start this raid now. Please give hard support to these guys, okay?
Love you, chat.
Love everyone.
You guys are all amazing.
Chat did amazing today. Everyone was so like supportive and positive. It's really good. The environment was good.
Did I mess up my raid command?
It said raid was canceled.
Oh. Well, okay. Now we're gonna raid. Hold on.
You sure it didn't say FishFriedCat was canceled for the Tifa comments?
Oh, I already
I'm the
have a
biggest
raid in
Tifa
process.
sip, man. You're safe. If any of them come after you, send them my way.
Bro, you're just gonna log on Twitter and the first thing you're gonna see is cancel up. It's the first thing that's gonna be on your
Hey man, if it gets me my own Blitz video, that's fine.
Is this raid working,
Only
guys?
25% of people.
25% of people. That's great.
Oh man. My thing to like get people to join my community used to be like, and if you really love Final Fantasy, I mean really love Final Fantasy.
This
People
is
in the chat
weird.
Did you stop doing that?
Yeah, I haven't done that.
Oh no, bring that back. No, I'm gonna bring that back.
Keep on doing it, man. You're almost at 100K, bro. Keep it up.
I know. I'm just like pumping it out.
I want to see you get that check. I want to see you get that check mark.
Bro, I want that shit so bad, and I want my plaque. I want my plaque.
That plaque needs to be in view when you're streaming too.
Oh, dude, it's going back here. For sure.
I think there is, in fact, guys, there is in fact an issue with yeah, it's
with rating.
Yeah, they're having technical issues on their end, so
okay.
the raid didn't work.
Okay,
I'm gonna let him know. Okay, guys.
It's all good. It's all good. Wait, he's not interviewing him live, is he?
That'd be crazy.
No, I wanted to do that. I didn't even ask because I was just like, oh, that probably would not be able to. They probably would not do that because I don't know if like the translator, who is a really nice guy, I don't know if you would.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, yeah, I could. Yeah.
But yeah.
So I've done the raid command a couple times, Final Fantasy TV. I'm not sure if you can hear, and it says that it can't because there's already a raid in progress on your end. So I think you're gonna need to go offline and then come back online really quick, and then all 70 of us will come over, etc.
Storming the gates. What is this ad? What? Again, like a Netflix ad. It's kind of interesting. Shadow and Bone.
Shadow and Bone was actually okay.
See this.
Okay, we're gonna raid.
Cool ass stuff. This was absolutely dope, guys.
Yeah, this was
really,
very fun.
I really appreciate it. I mean, one of the best decisions I made was using Twitter more, which allowed me to connect more with like the community. Because for